Good evening, everyone. The Durham Public Schools Board of Education work session is now in session. At this time, we wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to inform our parents, staff, and constituents about the work aligned with our mission to embrace, educate, and empower every student to innovate, serve, and lead. The interpreters for tonight are Martha Romo Urquieles, Karen Reyes, and Ana Ramirez. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Colleagues, constituents, you all may notice a little something different tonight. I want to bring our attention to policy 2235 about work session assignments. The board chair will designate up to 3 board members of the board to lead discussions of operational services and policy topics at work sessions, and up to 3 members to lead discussions of academic and student services topics. Tonight's designee is Ms. Joy Harold Goff. Thank you for serving. I'm going to pass it to Dr. Lewis before we go into our moment of silence.
Thank you so much, Board Chair Rogers. Good evening, board members, members of the public. We at Durham Public Schools have experienced tremendous loss. It's been a heavy past couple of weeks, tremendous loss with the death of 2 of our scholars these past 2 weeks, and we are deeply saddened and extend our sincerest condolences to the families, the friends, and to all of those affected by the loss of these 2 young souls. I did make contact with both families, and I know that they are already sorely missed, and our hearts go out to all of those who are grieving in our community. With respect to privacy of our scholars and their families during this difficult time, regardless of the circumstances surrounding these losses, we want our community and our scholars to know that the safety, the well-being, and the protection of our scholars is the highest priority for us. We also recognize and understand how critically important it is for our scholars to know that a trusted adult is available when they may need one. We encourage our scholars to seek support from a safe adult for any reason that they may deem necessary. We most assuredly want to know that what may be bothering them, whether it's school related or anything, and how we can assist them. Our student support services professionals stand ready and are able to offer confidential assistance with a listening ear. And so as we partake in this moment of silence, I would ask that we please keep our scholars in mind and their families. Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is we need to approve the agenda review. Or it's a moment of silence. Okay. Call the
Colleagues, the agenda is presented for us tonight. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by,
Excuse me. Okay, you want to call it?
sure,
Go ahead.
okay. Colleagues, we would like to call the approval of the agenda, of the agenda for this evening.
I have a discussion item.
Okay. This,
I'd like to pull summer programs to discuss at the end of the agenda.
all right, colleagues, do we have a motion to pull the discussion item summer programs from the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Byers, seconded by Ms. Carter Otten to move the summer programs agenda off of consent. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? It's approved unanimously. All right. Do we, and colleagues, can we now approve the agenda as it stands? Is there a motion to approve
As
the agenda?
amended.
So
As amended?
I would move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Umstead and seconded by Ms. Chavez. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's been approved unanimously. Right? Wow, okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is the general public comment.
The next item on our agenda is the meeting minutes.
Oh, the meeting minutes. Thought we just approved. Okay, oh, we have to approve. Colleagues.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 6, 2025.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Carter Otten, seconded by Ms. Byers. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. It's approved unanimously. And now, next on the agenda is the general public comment. Um, Superintendent
Lewis.
Lewis?
Yep.
Thank you so much. I would want to welcome and bring attention to our student representative, a member of my Superintendent Student Advisory Council, Kaylin Myers, a student at Durham School of Technology, who will be with us this evening. Yes, we can give her a round of applause. Well, one of the things that's a part of my entry plan tonight was to include student voice in this space. And so from here in perpetuity, we will have a student board member attending these board meetings, and they will be able to ask questions and provide feedback, just can't vote. And so welcome, Kaylin. Would you like to say a few words?
I'd just like to thank everyone for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I will try to do it to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do that.
All right. Now we are ready for public comment. Good evening, everyone. The Durham Public Schools Board of Education work session is now in session. We're going to do a quick review of the rules. First, please state your name. If you speak for an organization, please state your name and the name of the organization. Second, speakers are asked to present their comments in a specific time. This evening, we will have 3 minutes for comments. When the yellow light comes on, you have 1 minute left to start winding up your remarks. When the red light comes on, it will beep, which indicates that your time is up. Complaints about named staff, students, or parents should not be voiced in open session. However, we are very interested in hearing your concerns with regards to public education, safety of students, and to the operation of the school system. Finally, the board members will listen carefully and consider the comments, but we do not engage in a discussion with speakers. Our first speaker is Rachel Owens, followed by Jocelyn Hanson, and then Matthew.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Owens, and I teach science at Northern High School. I'm also a member of DPS's Energy Advisory Council. I first want to thank those of you that have been so gracious as to meet with representatives of our Sustainable Schools Coalition, made up of DPS students and staff, and Duke students as well. We have learned a lot from each of the meetings, and we hope to continue to forge these relationships throughout this process of moving towards a more sustainable future in Durham. We have heard you, and we know that financial concerns are the main issue going forward. We'd like to remind you that DPS's Energy Conservation Program has made some huge gains in terms of energy efficiency and rebates. Millions of dollars have been saved because of the efforts of a few. Imagine the savings we could manage if their efforts expanded to a comprehensive curricular program that involves all grade levels. Teachers and staff teaching students how to save energy as a systemic effort, part of a climate action plan, we can make even bigger gains. As always, we appreciate good intentions. What we need is action, a climate action plan. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Hanson, and I concede my time to Matthias Matthew.
Good evening. My name is Matthias Matthew. I'm a sophomore at Northern High School, a graduate of the Aaron Young Scholars Summer Research Institute at Duke, and a student with a deep worry for the state of our future. One day I walked from school, as I often do, and saw an electric bus with some small solar panels on the top and the letters EV1 on the side. I was ecstatic in an extremely nerdy way because I was excited to see climate progress being brought forward by DPS. But it wasn't a DPS school bus. It was a bus for the New Horizons Academy of Excellence, a private school that doesn't seem to have more than 30 students. It was personally heartbreaking to find this out because it shows that DPS is falling behind in terms of climate action to schools with far fewer resources than DPS does. We understand that the budget is tight right now, especially in the transportation sector, but it is unlikely that that tiny private school even paid for that bus. That's because under the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicles program, which was created under the Inflation Reduction Act, schools and other organizations are reimbursed for replacing gas-guzzling vehicles with electric ones, and the infrastructure necessary to use them, like charging ports. And if I understand correctly, the DPS energy managers had sent in a request for these same electric buses, but it was never acted upon. Because the energy managers, the one component of the resolution for renewable energy you all acted upon, are blocked from directly speaking with you all. The superintendent and school board members. And whoever is supposed to be relaying the message isn't doing their job. Again, if I understand correctly, all we needed was a signature from the superintendent to get these buses, but that still hasn't happened. And I'm not sure if this program is still available. The window for new applications has closed, and we may not be able to see another opportunity like this for the next 4 years. But our application is not new, and we may still have a chance to get this right. School buses are one thing that is relatively simple but monumentally important for climate action to electrify. Because while one bus transports a lot of kids, it also uses a lot of fuel over a lot of miles, meaning replacing one gas-powered bus with an electric one has a much larger impact than, for example, replacing a gas-powered car with an electric one. Getting electric buses would mean that they could and should be run on renewable energy. But even if they aren't right away, electric buses are still superior because electric vehicles are far more efficient than gas-powered ones, especially in terms of the amount of carbon they produce. This means that if electric vehicles are run by a coal or gas-powered energy facility, which they shouldn't be, the district would still reduce emissions and save money. School buses can also be used as a tool for climate resilience because they are basically giant mobile batteries, which could be a game changer if coupled with solar panels, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is that you all need to listen to your energy managers. I know that it isn't your fault that they have been effectively blocked from talking to you all directly, but now that you have been made aware of this issue, we all expect you to initiate these conversations. The energy manager's job is to guide the district towards energy efficiency and hopefully to renewables. But they are being blocked because someone thinks it would be cheaper to have the service in-house. This is wrong because the infrastructure, money, and most importantly, time that would be required to build a service like this from scratch just aren't available with climate change literally at our doorstep. And the energy managers have already saved you all more money than 2 people could possibly use on their own. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because while improvements in clean energy, energy efficiency, and reducing pollution are important and kind of the whole reason we're here, we will not accept pointless penny pinching and corner cutting because we will pay the costs of climate change regardless. Last night, when I was watching a documentary about the communities wrecked by Helene, the lives lost, the buildings washed away, I was reminded of one thing. We will pay the cost for climate change, regardless of whether it's through action or inaction. Because once-in-a-lifetime hurricanes will become commonplace, extreme droughts will lead to wildfires, and heat waves will be too strong for our current indoor infrastructure if we do not act. And we can decide whether we want to fiddle our thumbs and waiting for a flood to carry an elementary school down the Eno River, or if we want to take the simple, necessary steps towards climate action. Our ask is small. It is simple. It is what you agreed to in 2021, and we have done a lot of the hard work for you. It is that you enact a climate action plan, like the draft we have already created and provided you, and act on it. It is that you get to 80% renewable energy by 2035, and the clock is already ticking. And it is that you let the energy managers excel at their jobs. We have gotten a ton of symbolic support from you all. And while we appreciate good intentions, what we need is action, a climate action plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We don't typically respond to public comment. We appreciate your participation in our board meeting tonight. Last fall, that same energy manager was with us, and Congresswoman Valerie Fouché at Southern School for Sustainability and Energy, where it was announced that DPS will be receiving 32 electric buses. We look forward to that. It's still an initiative we stand behind. We're excited about. Happy to have more conversations about those things. But we are moving in that direction and did apply for that grant and were granted 32 buses.
Next, we have Madeline Fuente Velazquez, followed by Sharon Bagatelle and Karen Prus.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing great. My name is Madeline. I'm a junior at Middle College High School. I come as a part of the Sustainable Schools Coalition. Air pollution, environmental justice, and global warming, these are terms that I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. It's a huge matter in our world as we continue to modernize our society each day. However, we fail to minimize the negative impacts leading to greater negative results. As Durham continues to evolve, so does our voice for a climate action plan. As residents from Durham, we have a civic responsibility to find solutions to the things that are deteriorating our environment so that our future generation of leaders don't have to suffer. Our political climate may be struggling, but our advocacy for a climate action plan continues. And by transforming our CO2 emission schools into a more solarized, efficient one, we will see the improvement in the well-being of Durham residents. Not only that, but this will also financially support DPS schools by adding more focus to helping enhance the school rather than focusing on the cost. This has been proven in the Batesville School District in Arkansas, where the installation of over 1,400 solar panels increased the teacher's salary by up to $15,000. We hope to keep this going and that eventually this will be us as well. We thank you for your intentions. However, what we need right now is a climate action plan. Thank you guys. Have a great evening.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Sharon Bagatelle, and I'm a former public school teacher and a current resident of Durham. I'm also the National Youth Action Coordinator for Citizens Climate Education. In that capacity, I support the Great School Electrification Challenge, working with student teams across the country to move their districts forward toward electrifying their heating systems, cooking systems, lawn maintenance, transportation fleets, as well as installation of solar panels, and of course, improving energy efficiency. All the while, students are learning important life skills and working with decision makers to make change. I'm excited to say that the DPS Solar Futures team group speaking here this evening is now one of the national leaders in this challenge. With my national perspective, I know that DPS is in some ways ahead of the game, having already passed the 2021 Renewable Energy Resolution. We are deeply appreciative of that and the steps taken so far through the important work of the DPS energy managers. I'm also aware that you're very much like many school boards across the country in that you would, if you could, and we acknowledge the funding constraints. As a Durham resident, I'm keenly aware of all the issues you're balancing. However, I know that many school districts are forging on finding sources of funding that do exist. And recently, we're engaging students and community members to speak out on the importance of maintaining the energy tax credits and elective pay that have been available to schools through the Federal Inflation Reduction Act. We know that some school districts have adopted a phased-in approach to electrification, committing to shift to electric machines when in the natural course of a fossil fuel-powered machine's life, it breaks down and needs replacement. We understand that change can happen over time. We also know that school districts such as the one mentioned in Batesville, Arkansas, have made an initial expenditure from their capital budget and are now reaping the benefits in operating expenses. A fairly small school system, the Batesville district was able to save over $13,000 in monthly energy costs and over 4 years put $5.5 million into teachers' salaries. What all of these districts have done is create a plan. And so while we appreciate good intentions, what we need is action, a climate action plan for Durham Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Avery O'Brien? No, Karen Bruce.
Good evening. My name is Karen Pruse. I'm a member of the Durham chapter of the Climate Reality Project, and I've lived in Durham for about 40 years. I would like to express sincere appreciation for the progress in sustainability that Durham Public Schools has made in a number of years, and to urge you to continue on that path by developing an action plan to implement the energy resolution that was adopted in November of 2021. Durham Public Schools has an impressive track record of sustainability actions that has benefited the district and its students. Resource conservation policies, the 2015 resolution supporting sustainable facility design, which was incorporated in the learning environment guidelines. The hiring of sustainability and energy managers resulting in energy conservation program, which led to substantial cost savings, and DPS's first solar-powered school, and the award of a significant number of electric school buses. In other words, DPS is well-positioned to continue on the path of resiliency and conservation to meet its goals if it has a plan. This is a critical time. We owe it to our youth, the people that have spoken today, as you have heard, to do everything that we can to keep them safe from severe storms, from excessive heat, and the destruction of property, lives, and livelihoods that our fellow North Carolinians have suffered in the western part of our state. Please ensure that the younger generations, that ensure them that we care about their future and are taking action to secure it. The organization that I represent offers our support and assistance, as we have done in the past, for an action plan. Our members are experienced in education, public outreach, grant writing, and working with large organizations and institutions. We are dedicated and want to be of service to Durham Public Schools and our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Avery O'Brien, followed by Larry Thomas and Javonia Lewis.
Good evening. My name is Avery O'Brien, and I am a student of Durham School of the Arts, and I'm here representing Sunrise DSA as one of their co-hub coordinators and as a collaborator with the Sustainable Schools Coalition. I'd like to start by thanking those of you who have met with us to discuss our Green New Deal resolution. We really appreciate the time that you guys have taken to meet with us. Many people believe that though sustainable energy has a good reputation, the money it takes to invest in the updated technology is not worth the cost. As Ms. Sharon said, Ms. Batesville, Arkansas School District was able to turn a deficit of $250,000 into a $1.8 million surplus. By investing in energy-efficient measures, such as the installation of over 1,400 solar panels, this meant that teachers' salaries were raised and their debts were gone, and it was all thanks to clean energy solutions. With that said, we understand that we are not Batesville, Arkansas, and it's not 2017. We have no way to ensure the same results in our context, but that doesn't mean that our plan for a green future isn't feasible. We know budgeting and feasibility are a leading concern when it comes to this resolution, which is why we're meeting with experts like Dr. Webb, the DPS operations manager, and Jonathan Klein, the co-founder and CEO of Undaunted K-12, to discuss what a climate action plan like this could look realistically like in DPS. We are excited to inform you of our findings and hopefully use them to push this resolution forward. When we pass this Green New Deal resolution, we would be the 6th school district in the U.S. and the 1st in the South. We would be able to set a precedent throughout the nation, and that would encourage other school districts to follow in our footsteps. Furthermore, we want to show higher levels of government that this is what people want, and more importantly, this is what people need. A climate action plan, a Green New Deal, cannot be put on the back burner any longer. We have 4 years. Please act quickly. We don't have much time. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Larry E. Thomas. I am the leader at the Thomas Mentor Leadership Academy, the best male mentoring program in the country, where we provide love, leadership, and guidance for young men 7 to 18 years old who are being raised specifically by a single parent or being raised by their grandparents. And once the young men come in our academy at 7, they stay with us to 18. And once they graduate, we continue to follow them through college or the military. But I'm here tonight. Recently, we did we serve 4 different counties: Durham County, Wake County, Orange County, and Alamance. But the majority of our boys go to Durham Public Schools. And recently, we did an activity with our boys called Taking Off the Mask in dealing with mental health. So I just want to read a few of these with you with your time. And we asked them, don't put names, don't put anything on them, and we'll collect them. And on the front side of the mask, we asked them the right thing, 3 things that you show the world every day. You don't mind showing the world. And they wrote things. One young man wrote, I'm smart, I show them I'm muscular, and I'm happy. But on the back side of his mask, we asked them to write things that they wish they could talk to someone about. They wish they could talk about, but they don't. And so on the back side of his mask, he wrote, I wish I can talk to someone about my pain, about my mind racing constantly, but I don't speak. I wish I can talk to someone about my fear. I wish I can talk to someone about my anxiety succumbing to fear of failure. The next young man wrote, I show the world my smile, my intelligence, my love. But on the backside of his mask, he wrote, I want to talk to someone about people being nasty and mean to me, about people hating me. One young man, I show the world that I'm smile, I'm happy, my creativity, my love for God. But on the backside of his mask, he said, I wish I can talk to someone about self-hate, the overwhelming fear of constantly failing people, and how being an embarrassment to my parents. On the front side of a mask, one young man wrote, I'm hardworking, I take action. On the back side of his mask, he said, I have seasonal depression, I need help. I wish I can help financially, but I'm only 13. Another young man wrote, I'm happy, I'm prideful, I'm confident, but I deal with anxiety. I wish I can talk to someone about my anger. Wish I can talk to someone about my sadness. These are young men that's going into our Durham public schools every morning. Young man wrote, I have confidence, I smile, I show the world, but I wish I can talk to someone about my fears, my emotional pain, and my anger. I'm cool, I'm caring, but I wish I can talk to somebody about my anxiety, my anger issues, and
Good evening. My name is Javanya Lewis, and I am representing Empowered Parents in Community. We're here to share our voices from our various organizations, working closely with students to advocate for those who have been historically marginalized, those that have been without voices. What truly brought us together is our shared investment in the success of Black children. There are many attacks on public education, and we will not show up to attack as we understand the disinvestment in our public schools, but we are here to shed light and make visible the truth around why this work is important. We are advocating for the protection of public education and supporting educators who are working so hard to ensure the success of all children, knowing that they are constantly under attack, and a small subset of folks creating division in Durham on arbitrary facts and mostly misinformation. We are here to shed light on truth. Most of us would agree that no matter where you come from, what you look like, or how much money you have, everyone should have an equal opportunity to learn and thrive. But we also know this is not always the case. We know that there are practices that can be prioritized, such as counselors and restorative coaches. I've taken Nick King's words to heart from the previous board meeting and the analysis that he has made around restorative practices. I want to connect a few dots for you. We want a restorative practice policy passed by this board. I don't know, I don't want to wait for a public policy committee to be formed, but for those who have been elected, for those who have administration to work on this policy, and a policy to include mandatory trauma-informed training and liberatory classroom management for our teachers, curriculum instruction department working collaboratively with student support services to ensure that social emotional learning and opportunities are implemented throughout the day, and the elimination of suspension and exclusionary practices. We know that funding is hard here. We're just asking, as your department heads are looking at where their cuts are being made or where priorities are, that we're prioritizing the health and mental health of our students with what we already have. And don't forget about Mackenzie Scott funding. DPS Strong, we are with you. Together we can create a sense of belonging, support, and restoration for our educators and each of our children in Durham Public Schools. Partnership is important. I'm looking forward to the DPS Family and Community Engagement Summit on April 26th. Keep up the good work, y'all.
Thank you. Next, we have DeLeon Gray, followed by Charlene Scepter. I think that's, if I'm reading that correctly, and Christy Clem.
Good evening, everyone. My name is DeLeon Gray. I'm CEO of Black and Belonging, and I represent a close-knit network of young thinkers here in Durham who are creating a more welcoming society and also creating more welcoming schools. And so there's a couple things that they wanted me to represent for them today. The biggest thing that they wanted is for their belonging expertise to be taken seriously. So they believe that they are belonging experts in their own right because they have a unique perspective on their school experiences. And so they want to invite you all to take their belonging expertise seriously by elevating them as decision makers, key decision makers, not only in their school, but also in DPS as a whole. So there are a few benefits that they wanted you all to know. The first is that this will help with credentialing. So if we think about things from Supreme Court decisions on race and not being able to use race in college admissions, credentialing them through leadership positions also elevates them and makes them more likely to be able to get scholarships and other things because they have already been stamped by their school districts as leaders and thinkers and movers, shakers, and shapers. The second thing that they wanted us to ponder on is just district-wide competitiveness. And so seeing that school choice policies are a real threat to public education funding, they wanted us to know that, you know, with parents having choice and agency, that makes the push towards public education something that needs to be competitive. And so having opportunities for more advanced learning opportunities via leadership opportunities makes DPS schools more competitive for these students and makes it a place where they want to be and want to stay. The third piece that they wanted us to know is that it helps them practice citizenship. So you know, how else are they supposed to understand what rights have been taken away from them in society if they don't practice being agents with rights in their own schools and school district? So with this in mind, I just want to end with this note that together we can create belonging, support, and restoration for our educators and every child within DPS. Thank you so much for your time.
Is Charlene Scepter? Is she not here? Well, we'll go ahead and hear from Christy Clem.
Hello, good evening. I'm Christy Clem, physical therapist, DEA member. I'm here to ask again the same thing I've asked in comments before and send in emails classified employees would like some information is possibility that our legacy pay is going to go away. How exactly was that 8.8 million used from last year? We're getting a general answer of it was used as it should be. You have to understand employees don't trust a vague answer like that. And also, we are asking for a list of how pay grades can pair across the pay debacle. If you were a 78 and then Hill changed you to a V and then the comptroller put you on a reclassified 78 and now I'm considered an MH 18, where is that information for all the folks so they can compare what is actually happening to their pay over the last year and a half? From an OTPT perspective, the new Erie schedules have only compressed our salaries even more. You've heard me say when I compare our OTPT pay to Wake County, we start at the same step 0, but in year 30 here, I would be making less than year 9 in Wake County. If Durham compensated me for my doctorate degree, I would be year 30 here making less than what Wake does in year 7. Since the last time I spoke, I went and compared that to DPS speech. So in our own district, looking at somebody who is a licensed health professional working with students in the EC department, and it is almost the exact same as Wake County. PTOT starts about $1,000 more per year than Durham speech, but a speech therapist will be making more in year 10 than I will year 30. Speech is compensated for their doctorate, but yet in year 7, they will be making more than I will on year 30. This is why OTs are leaving like crazy. PTs haven't yet, but it is the constant rumbling of who is going to be here next. OTs currently, several of them have, their workload is that of 1.5 employees. They have left and they are trying to cover. There's not enough hours in the week to serve the IEP services that they should be. For the salary administrating working group that's on the agenda tonight, I've been invited to a couple of those meetings. I greatly appreciate being included, but I do want to say that I feel like I have very little information and haven't been involved much. So to see my name on the slide as an employee that's given input, I do feel like that gives a false representation. Went to one meeting in the fall where it was my first one. I only listened. I said nothing trying to figure it out, and I went to one last week. Had questions, haven't gotten additional information from that. Someone else on that slide has been to one meeting and is listed as a member. Again, I greatly appreciate being included, but not included to the point that that's real input. Something formal, meet and confer, a consistent way for true employees across the district to give input is vital. This is the illusion of employee input. It's not true input. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Alexandra Valdarez and Molina.
Thank you, board. It's and members of the community. It's so great to greet you all. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and remind you that our mission says Durham Public Schools embraces, and I'm going to stay with that word, because right now there are families that are looking for that embrace. Does it in our mission? I don't know what that means to you, but I know that my heart breaks because a family says that word right there is not happening. And I'm pretty sure this is a sentiment where everybody's busy and lots of things are happening. Everybody's busy. Lots of things are happening in my world too. But I chose to come out tonight, and I actually have to head out and go somewhere else because the family is saying, please remind DPS that our mission is to embrace. DPS embraces, educates, and empowers every student to innovate, serve, and lead. We don't mention names, but Gabi Ortega legacy, it's a legacy. And the legacy is end bullying. It means support families. It means have sufficient infrastructure, including interpreters in every school, that families don't have to question whether the Multilingual Resource Center is available at that school or not. It also means that when they're grieving and they're out there in a public easement, that they want to see administrators to show up and give them a hand. Thank you, Dr. King. You did that. You were the only one. That wasn't probably part of the plan, but you know what? You did it. You embraced that moment and you shook that dad's hand. And now he knows somebody shook his hand. That family has been out there for many days. day after day. This Sunday might be an opportunity. If you're interested, reach out if you have time. But we have to work on embracing. We have to work on sustaining, holding space for grief. We cannot act like it's just another business day, because that is exactly what shows our kids that they don't matter. That when something happens to them, their families are going to be wondering, where is the support? And so I need all of us to step it up. I need all of us to not just think about liabilities and what could happen. No, this is a family that just wants a hug. Can you give them a hug? Can you show up and say, I am so sorry you lost your child. You lost your beautiful angel that was going to be an amazing rock star, scientist, artist, was going to shake this world. And she felt this world was toxic enough to leave it. A child made a decision to leave it. And she's not the only one. And I actually want data from NC Department of Health and Human Services, vital records. How many of our children are taking that decision on their own hands? What is the pattern in DPS? Because I know there are other districts that have that responsibility, but we have a responsibility to look at that data and see how we are really, not just what before it happens, but after it happens, to embrace families. Thank you.
Thank you. Just take a breath, take a moment. This concludes our public discussion. Oh. Are you, Charles Cepeda. All right, I called earlier but missed. I'm sorry, I apologize. So Charles Cepeda, and then Melina.
Hello, my name is Charles Cepeda. I want to speak about the Gabby Ortega legacy. Let's end bullying in schools. As a concerned citizen and parent, what is the rule in bullying in school, and is there accountability? What actions were taken? What if it was your child that was bullied? What are the repercussions? Let's end bullying in schools. How can you relate to students and parents that bullying has to end or it's not allowed in schools? Again, like Ms. Alexander said, embrace. None of that was done. I was physically there and I was escorted off the property because I asked to speak to someone twice. As a community and as a concerned parent and a veteran, it's sad to see that happen. What if that was my child? Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Melina García. No estaba preparada para hablar aquí, pero lo que voy a decir.
Can we get an interpreter? Okay. So Nicole, Ms. Smith, thank you. Go ahead, please start over.
No estaba preparada para hablar aquí, pero lo que voy a decir sale de mi corazón y lo hago como madre y como inmigrante. El caso de la alumna de DSA no debe y no puede volver a repetirse. La víctima pudo haber sido nuestra hija y tenemos que hacer algo al respecto. Las condolencias son palabras que se agradecen, pero las palabras se las lleva el viento. Los padres de la alumna de DSA no están solos y exigimos hechos. Si la escuela DSA no está haciendo una investigación para sancionar a los implicados en este caso, y me refiero a los niños que hicieron bullying y al personal que no apoyó de manera debida a los padres, entonces, ¿quién es responsable de hacer esta investigación? La alumna dejó nombres y esas personas deben saber que sus actos tienen consecuencias. En este caso fueron consecuencias fatales. Queremos justicia para la iniciativa Gabri Ortega Legacy y prevención para proteger a nuestros jóvenes. Hoy más que nunca debemos enseñar a nuestros hijos a respetar y hacerse respetar. Todas las vidas importan.
Good evening. My name is Melida Garcia. I was not prepared to intervene tonight, but I need to talk and things that come from my heart as a mother, as an immigrant. The case of the student or DSA, it can't and it should not be left alone. We should investigate. Condolences are thankful, but these are just words that the wind takes them. We need to make the investigation about the DSA, who is in charge of doing this, who are the kids, the students that were involved in the bullying, who were the parents that did not, who were the teachers that did not support. They need to know that there is a consequence. The student left the names. We need to know those names. We need to find out what are the consequences for these actions. We need to respect every human life. Every life matters.
Thank you. This now concludes public comment. Next on the agenda, colleagues, we need to have a motion to approve the consent items.
I move approval of the consent agenda, item overnight field trips, item contract with Framework Consulting for Exceptional Children's Teachers, item retesting take 2, and the DPS legislative agenda for 2025.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Byers, seconded by Chair Rogers. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's been approved unanimously. Where do we put? It'll be the last item on the agenda, okay. All right, next on the agenda is our superintendent's post-entry plan. Dr. Lewis?
Colleagues, can we take a 5-minute recess, please?
All right, colleagues, we're back and we are on the superintendent's post-entry plan. Dr. Lewis?
Thank you so much, Board Member Harold Goff. Good evening again to all board members, members of the public, those that are watching. It's certainly an honor and brings me great joy and excitement to share with you finally the results of the post-entry plan. It's my distinct honor to serve as superintendent of Durham Public Schools in such an incredible community that includes amazing scholars that show up to board meetings on their spring break. Oh, maybe I spoke too soon, right? But our student representative did show up today on her spring break, so that shows the commitment that she has for Durham Public Schools. Since beginning my journey here in Durham Public Schools, I set out to do a lot of listening and learning. I shared with the board and the community an entry plan that included some goals, which we will kind of cover here in just a moment. It's through those visits, those conversations with a tremendous amount of people internally and externally, students, families, community members, educators, and engaging many individuals that make up this amazing community. I've gained a deep appreciation for just the energy and the commitment and the support for public schools here in Durham. Our district has innovative programs, a lot of strengths that were noted during these sessions that we will share with you all this evening. For those that may be watching, the entire booklet is available on board docs. I will try not to go to every line in the book. However, I do want to make sure that we honor the many voices that have contributed to the feedback in terms of gathering to outline some action steps as a result of what we heard. And so, next slide, please. Everything that we do in Durham Public Schools and everything that I set out to do, learning the school system, is centered around our mission and vision. And really, the way I approach this is really listening and learning to really think about how do we bring this vision, this mission to reality. And everything is also grounded in those core beliefs of, yes, still equity, high expectations, shared responsibility, and a child-centered approach. I want to spend a little time, there she is. I want to spend a little time on high expectations. Durham Public Schools will challenge every stakeholder, especially our students and educators, to embrace a growth mindset. And this belief that every child can be academically successful. So that growth mindset is not just in our students, but also in our educators as well. Next slide. Grounding my work was also around these core principles of a commitment to achievement, passion for learning. These are the things I wanted to ensure that I observe: respect for self and others, educational equity, integrity and accountability, and community partnerships. That's one thing that we should be proud of in Durham Public Schools is our community partnerships, whether it's our higher ed partners, our foundation, other entities that are working alongside us, Book Harvest, working alongside us to, again, realize this mission. You've heard me say it before, schools can't do it alone, and it really takes those community partnerships that we value so greatly. So all those are words on a slide, words on a paper, the mission, the vision, the core beliefs, the guiding principles. But there are some faces behind those words. Next slide. Can you go back one? Okay. I don't know what happened to, I hope you got the updated version, but there are some faces. Okay, you have faces. The faces are online. We make sure we have the updated version of that. But it's a picture, if you're able to see it online, it's a picture, a beautiful representation of our Durham Public Schools scholars. Those are the faces behind all of these words. These words are meaningless unless we are making sure that it becomes a reality for our scholars. Next slide. A critical part of the transition was the entry plan, and I shared the entry plan here with the board and the community. My first goal was to establish a transparent and collaborative and trusting relationship with the Durham Public Schools Board of Education. As we know, the board plays a crucial role in shaping policies and providing governance to the school system. And so what we did to accomplish this goal was conduct one-on-one meetings with all board members. We engaged in a board retreat. Our first one was held in November, and our second one was in February, where we had an opportunity to discuss governance, policy, governance team roles. We administered a self-assessment and discussed the self-assessment, discuss our communication plan that we'll continue to craft and that will come forward. Board priorities. If you're familiar with any sports teams, what they do is look at film. Although we did not look at a film of a board meeting, but we did discuss a board meeting in terms of just an after-action review. We also discussed my evaluation tool in which our work, quite frankly, will be assessed. The entry plan number 2 was to focus on the instructional program. So one of the data points that we should be most proud of is that you've heard that over 81% of our schools in DPS met or exceeded growth during the 23-24 school year. And I'll tell you, based on my observations in the classrooms and attending many of the schools, most recently middle of the year data review meetings, I will tell you we are poised to continue improving academic outcomes for all students. Durham students are, as you'll see, as you know, are full of promise. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that we nurture that promise and remove any barriers that are in the way so that all of our children can excel. Goal number 3, one of the top priorities was to evaluate the internal systems and procedures, or lack thereof, that are to ensure that all of our schools receive the supports and services that they need in a timely manner in order for the schools to be successful. Over the past few months, I've conducted a review of our district operations to identify the strengths and the areas of improvement. Particularly, there was areas of improvement in the areas of transportation, right? We spent a tremendous amount of time discussing transportation, facilities, human resources, our business and finance. Those were areas that we immediately noted that needed additional attention. In addition, I've met with all principals, I met with many teachers and staff to understand from their lens, what are our operational challenges that they face daily? You know, I often tell people we just can't sit around the table, make decisions that impact our students, that impact our educators and other staff without having some type of contextual knowledge as to the challenges that they face daily. So as a result of that, we work to remove those barriers that hinder, for example, responsiveness, just being responsive to our buildings. Also, during the listening and learning session, I was made aware of a lack of responsiveness from central services departments. And so this reminded me of a quote from Alvin Wilbanks, was a superintendent, I want to say he was in Gwinnett County, where he once said that there are 2 kinds of people in a district: those who teach and those that support those who teach. Central Services supports those who teach, and so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are supporting those in the buildings. Entry plan number 4 was to identify and analyze critical issues and remove barriers. And then 5, definitely enjoyed establishing working relationships in monthly or frequent meetings with Durham Council of PTAs. I have a standing monthly meeting with them. I've met several times with our Durham Advocates of Exceptional Children. I have a monthly meeting with DAE, Durham Association of Educators, particularly the president, Micah Tweetmeyer, as well as the Durham City and county leaders. Also have one-on-one meetings with the city manager, county manager. Those have also been invaluable in terms of just learning from the political landscape and how they serve as critical partners to us. Next slide. Yeah, that's not, she's gonna, okay. We're gonna get the appropriate slide up because I had some good stuff in there. Any questions so far as we get the other slides up? What did you say we could do? As they're pulling the other slides up, online, you can, as I've initiated or mentioned when I first got here, there was a key that will outline whether the goals in the entry plan were initiated or completed. And so you can go back and check and see my progress on all the entry plan goals and action steps. So that is still on the website. We have it? Okay. All right. Should I keep going? Or wait, Peter? On slide, going to slick 6. And in the essence of time, we can come back and look at the slides, but okay, maybe. Perfect. All right, in addition to the professional entry plan, I also released a personal entry plan that included some things that I needed to do to become engulfed in the Durham community. The first one that I checked off the list was move to Durham, so I actually moved to Durham and moved my family to Durham. Got a North Carolina license. I haven't changed the tag yet because it's a wait to do that, but that's coming. That's coming. I have grabbed some Bull City apparel and some were your gifts as well. I have toured a couple of the Durham murals. I did get a library card. I spent a lot of time on number 6, which is exploring Durham's go-to food spots. I spent a lot of time there. Haven't attended a game yet because I haven't been here when they were in session. I think, no, I did come here and it was toward the end of the season. So definitely looking forward to attending that. Having not hiked or biked the American Tobacco because I was too much number 6 going on there for me to do any hiking. Or bike. Yeah, I can bike to the food spots. Still waiting to take my family pictures at the American Tobacco campus. Have explored downtown Durham. Some of the museums. I did attend NCCU's homecoming. I did do that. Uh, haven't spent a Saturday at the farmer's market yet, or I have taken a stroll down 9th Street. I've been to 2 Duke games so far. So, uh-oh. Wow. Been to 2, I thought I was gonna get some applause around that. Okay. All right. Maybe I need to take that off. Okay, number 16, climb the Duke Chapel Tower. Absolutely not. Been spending time on number 6. Haven't picked up produce from the Perkins Orchard. Haven't joined the local Facebook parenting group tribe, which want to stay off there. Number 19, have taken the kids out for some fun at one of the museums. I did see a show at Missy Lane's. Yes, it was nice. Have caught 2 shows at the DPAC. One I attended with Mr. Tab and the Carolina Theater. And I will take some of the food from number 6 and maybe have a picnic at the Duke Garden. So just wanted to update you on my personal entry plan as well. So still some goals there to make. Next slide.
Dr. Lewis, the Duke Gardens parking lots closed for construction.
Oh, okay. So that's gonna have to delay that one. So if we look at our entry plan by the numbers, visited 57 schools, had 8 in-person listening and learning sessions, 7 that were scheduled with the community and 1 with my superintendent student advisory council, 509 registrants for the listening and learning section. A huge thank you to those that showed up for those and the over 400 that completed the online surveys. Over 60 meetings with community partners, and the online comments from the survey. Many people read and rated those comments, over 2,400, all centered around this one belief that DPS can be the premier school district in the country. Next slide. The hallmark of the entry plan was indeed the listening and learning sessions, those 8 sessions. And so all of the feedback that I collected, I wanted to honor all of the feedback. Now, you may not see your line that you submitted, but we tried to capture we captured all the thoughts and tried to summarize them into themes. Okay, so hopefully you will see some of the feedback that you shared with us. Next slide. So the first question that we asked, what are the strengths of Durham Public Schools? And I will tell you that we received a lot of great feedback in terms of the variety of strengths, including our dedicated and passionate staff. Participants acknowledged the dedication and the commitment of our DPS staff as a unifying strength. They mentioned our teachers, administrators, and support staff, and they were praised for their passion and their hard work and how they often go above and beyond to support our students despite the challenges. And that was clear. I heard that several times, that even though the school system has experienced some challenges, we still have dedicated and committed staff. Diversity was mentioned. quite a bit. It was a significant strength of Durham Public Schools, and it was frequently mentioned by our participants. It encompasses our ethnic, economic, and educational diversity that many participants said created a melting pot of people. This diversity is also seen in our student body, staff, and leadership, fostering an inclusive environment. Participants appreciated the exposure to different cultures and backgrounds that helps enrich learning experiences. The diverse structure of our program offerings, including dual language and Montessori, was also mentioned as a strength. I also read somewhere that I think Durham Public Schools is ranked number 3 in terms of diversity out of all school systems in North Carolina. Community engagement. Community engagement was highly valued. We got a lot of feedback there with strong parental support and support from local organizations. Participants highlighted the district's efforts to listen and to incorporate community feedback. Again, staff quality. Durham Public Schools was actually praised frequently for the dedication and passion of our staff, particularly our teachers and administrators. And again, they mentioned despite the challenges such as funding cuts, staffing shortages, and the staff, they praised the staff resilience for being creative and engaging students. And they said that was, excuse me, truly commendable. They talk about our program offerings, a wide range of programs and pathways to meet the diverse needs of our scholars. Participants mentioned options such as our year-round schools, our magnet programs, and our career-focused offerings. The availability of extracurricular activities, sports, arts, and other clubs was mentioned as a highlight, and how these provide opportunities for our scholars to explore their interest and passion. They talked about our partnerships with local colleges and organizations, how those also enhance our offerings. They mentioned support services that was recognized in a positive way. They also highlighted the availability of counselors, social workers, and mental health services, and also programs like our multi-tiered systems of support, as well as restorative justice practices were appreciated in terms of addressing students' holistic needs. They praised the free meals, free lunch, and free breakfasts, as well as tutoring services. Next slide. I'll try to speed up on some of these. Questions to the areas that needs improvement. So several responses highlighted areas that needed improvement, including better support and resources for our special needs scholars, consistent communication and transparency from the district, as well as improved school safety measures, addressing teacher shortages, and also compensation. They talked about discipline, and some of the participants said we need more stricter discipline policies in place. They said that there was a significant concern about the inconsistencies and what they captured as perceived leniency of the enforcement of our disciplinary policies. Parents and teachers were frustrated with the lack of consequences for student misbehavior, which they believe undermine authority and contributes to what they describe as chaotic school environment. Again, I want to share that we are sharing all of the feedback that we collected. Trust was an area that they mentioned needed to be improved. They agree that trust is a fundamental issue that needs to be addressed, whether it's through better communication or more consistent disciplinary actions. Building trust between parents, teachers, and administrators is seen to be as a crucial area for us to address. And then some of them offered ways that we could ensure that trust and fostered transparency, accountability, and responsiveness. Communication was also an area that needs improvement. I'll kind of breeze through these, and if you have questions about some of the feedback that they gave us, I'll be more than happy to take those questions. But as it relates to communication, there were more calls for transparent and timely updates regarding policy changes, school events, and safety protocols. Special needs support. Support for our students with special needs was seen as inadequate by some participants. There were concerns for lack of consistent services, necessary tools, and trained staff to support students effectively. Some responses mentioned the need for better individualized education program, or IEPs, and more inclusive policies. The perception is that the current system fails to meet the needs of special needs students, causing significant hardships for families. Participants also advocate for more resources and better training for staff to address these issues. Teacher and staff support, a strong sentiment around more support for our teachers and staff. They talked about some lack of resources and high turnover, school facilities and safety, transportation. Keep in mind, these were sessions that were in the fall, so we were definitely in the middle of our transportation crisis. And so we received a lot of feedback on transportation issues, highlighting problems with bus schedule, late arrivals, no-shows, inadequate routes, which obviously affects students' ability to get to school and to participate fully in their education. There was also concerns about the safety and reliability of our transportation services. And then they talked about just systemic challenges, stating that DPS faces systemic challenges that impact its effectiveness, and issues like funding cuts, staffing shortages, disparities in resources between schools created significant hurdles. As also addressing these systemic issues call for just an overall improvement in the sustainability of the school system. Question number 3, we asked what should be the district priorities to address financial challenges. If you recall, when we had a press conference earlier, we began to act on some of this feedback earlier once Mr. Teeter was at a point where he could share where we were from a budget and finance standpoint. And so they call for more transparency around our finances. Staff compensation. In this particular question, staff compensation emerged as the most frequently mentioned priority. Many responses emphasized the needs to prioritize staff compensation, and they included teachers, bus drivers, and other essential staff. Other responses call for equitable pay scales, differential pay for special programs, and just ensuring, we got a lot of feedback ensuring just ensuring that our staff could just afford to live in this community. Other responses highlighted the importance of investing in school infrastructure, including building maintenance, technology, and other resources for students. And I already mentioned transparency and accountability. Engaging the community was seen to be critical for addressing some of those financial challenges. Resource allocation, they talked about effective allocation, effective allocation of resources. That definitely was a recurring theme in this question. They stressed the need for prioritizing spending on critical areas such as teacher pay, student programs, and infrastructure. And then there was a lot of conversation about, yes, these are things that DPS can do, but as a family, what can we do? So they call for more advocacy at the state and federal level, highlighting some key priorities there. Next slide. Question 4 asks, how can we raise the academic success for all students and eliminate access and opportunity gaps? And you see some of the themes there, and some of those are reoccurring, like teacher compensation, quality of teaching. They called for reduced standardized testing. You know, some of those we are beyond our control as relates to state assessment. Teacher support, student-centered approaches, community and family engagement, equity and access, and curriculum and instruction. Trying to make sure I might hit some highlights there. They mentioned the importance of addressing the needs of our marginalized groups, such as our students of color and those with disabilities. In this particular question, I'll tell you that curriculum instruction was frequently mentioned with participants advocating for more engaging and relevant curriculum. There were concerns about the overemphasis, as I mentioned, of standardized assessments and the need for diverse instructional methods. Next slide. And then question 5 asks, what will it take to make Durham Public Schools a premier school district? And those were the themes that emerged from that particular question. A huge focus on safety. There were concerns about safety incidents such as firearms being brought to school, and the need for better mental health supports for our scholars was highlighted in this question. Focus on academics and community engagement was mentioned in this question. They talked about effective leadership. And then again, accountability and transparency. Any questions on the questions that we asked during the listening and learning section? All right. So those were the questions and the feedback. And in the booklet that's available online, it goes into detail of it as it relates to these themes. And so as a result of hearing those questions, next slide, we just want to reflect on these first 100 days as superintendent and just think about where do we go from here? We receive that feedback, and what we know is that yes, people don't mind giving you their feedback, but they will stop giving you feedback if they don't see any action as a result of the feedback. And so these next few sessions or slides will talk about the actions as it relates to the feedback. Next slide. And I love this next quote by Nelson Mandela that states that action without vision is only passing time. Vision without action is merely daydreaming, but vision with action can change the world. Next slide. So what we'll dig into is a combination of these learnings, highlighting some key takeaways that will guide our collective efforts as we move forward. And so these reflections are aligned to the entry plan goals, as well as, and not only underscores the importance of collaboration in the community, but also will help us illuminate our path forward. Next slide. So with that, there were 13 immediate priorities for Durham Public Schools going forward, and those are listed on your screen. And so I'll spend some time just kind of sharing our path forward as it relates to these 13 immediate action steps. Some of the things we are already implementing, and some will happen, the remainder of the year, and some will, quite frankly, take some time moving forward. All right, we ready? All right, let's dive in. The next one, well, the first one is enhance academic excellence and rigor. Next slide. So we must ensure that we have schools that challenge and inspire all of our scholars through rigorous, engaging, and high-quality instruction in every single classroom that prepares them for college, careers, and lifelong success. And we must ensure that we are preparing our students for their success, and for their future, which will look totally different, will look totally different from by the time they leave us. Establish a district-wide instructional framework. So this will ensure that there is common language, common set of expectations for all teachers, and instructional practices align across classroom, schools, and grade levels. Enhancing and aligning our curriculum and instruction and assessment. This will also assist with identifying gaps and redundancies and evaluate how funding, staffing, and materials are distributed to support curriculum and instruction. So we're going to look at ways we can improve professional development for our educators. One of the things we ask our educators to do is to differentiate their instruction. We have to make sure that we're differentiating our professional development for our educators as well, and providing them support. And this was one of the things that came up in our middle of the year data reviews, the notion of providing teachers with support so that they can enhance their depth of knowledge in instruction and move beyond DOK level 1 and 2, because many of our state assessments are on DOK levels 3. I talked about the instructional framework and aligning our curriculum, and then I'm also excited to establish an AI task force. How many of you, let me see the responses that we get in here, Dr. Pittman, how many of you have heard of a prompt engineer? Okay. You can participate. So okay. Kaylin has as well. Was in a couple of other spaces with adults, and it was probably this amount of hands that went up in those rooms. I asked yesterday in my superintendent student advisory council, and just about all hands went up. And so these are the jobs that we need to be preparing our students for, to be a prompt engineer that's closely related to working with AI. I often tell people that AI today is the worst that it will ever be. It's only going to get better, and we're already behind. And so we have to think about what are we doing to prepare our scholars and our educators for the appropriate use of artificial intelligence. And so as a result, we will be launching an AI task force that will help inform what are the implications for board policy as it relates to the guidelines for the appropriate use of AI. We think about some of the horror stories from AI is some of the deep fakes, right? Thinking about what are our guidelines and expectations as it relates to that. But most importantly, the appropriate use of AI from an instructional standpoint and ensuring that our scholars appropriately use AI. How am I doing? Okay. All right. Thank you. My timekeeper. So what will happen is we'll share more in the future about how we will select those individuals. We want educators, parents, community members. There are some community members here in Durham that are steeped in AI that we want to serve on this task force. Students and educators and administrators alike will help guide our work there. Which again, the ultimate goal is operational efficiency, and this will also help with another goal that we'll talk about here in just a minute. Next slide. One of the things that we noticed is that there's not a lot of coherence in some of our programs. And I love this Fullen and Quinn quote that states, there's only one way to achieve greater coherence, and that is through purposeful action and interaction, working on capacity, clarity, precision of practice, transparency, monitoring of progress, and continuous correction. All of this requires the right mixture of pressure and support. The press for progress within supportive and focused cultures. So our higher levers are our classroom teachers. Next slide. There are many factors that support student outcome or student academic performance. Yes, there's family experiences, there are neighborhood experiences. The research is clear that the number one decisive factor in terms of improving student outcomes is the classroom teacher. The teachers matter most. As a matter of fact, they matter more than to student achievement than any other aspect. And so it's really the most important school-related factor in terms of influencing student achievement. And so when it comes to student performance on any assessment, reading, science, math, teachers are estimated to have 2 or 3 times the effect of any other school factor. And so knowing this, next slide, we have to make sure that we are supporting our teachers and our staff. Again, from the feedback we receive, compensation and retention. And so that's ensuring that we are fiscally responsible and advocating for salary increases for the purpose of focusing on teacher retention, particularly as by bus drivers and other support staff. Looking at workload reduction strategies, and I think AI can help us with this as well, but implementing ways that we can work to reduce some of the non-instructional burdens from our educators. Looking at implementing differential pay for hard-to-fill positions, EC, but also looking at creative ways that we can attract our most effective educators to our schools that need them the most. And so how can we incentivize our most effective teachers to work where they're needed the most, but also looking at pay differential for our bus drivers as well. And then always advocating for local and state funding, partnering with our city and county, as well as our state officials as we continue to advocate for increased funding. I think it was shared at a previous meeting around the additional funding that we have to, and we'll continue to do because we have to invest in our EC learners, due to that 13% cap and the fact that we are investing $5.5 million to support our EC learners, like I say, which we will continue to do. However, just think about what we could do with that $5 million in terms of investing in our staff. So I wanted to point that out for continued advocacy for full funding of our special education, our EC learners. Next slide. Also looking at creative ways to explore housing and cost of living support. There's a lot of synergy and efforts to discuss teacher housing, but also thinking about childcare assistance. We know the expensive cost of childcare. So what are some ways that DPS as a school system can lift that burden for our educators by providing free childcare for our educators and staff? And enhancing our beginning teacher mentor programs. What we know is that educators decide to leave the profession, new educators decide to leave the profession in years 1 through 3. And so strengthening the support with our beginning teacher mentors and expanding that model to support our newly hired educators. We looked at some data recently that over 50%, I want to say it was around 55% of our new educators come to us with an alternative license, meaning they did not go to school to be an educator. And so the additional support that they need is critical for us to provide that support so that they could, be supported for our educators as well. So that is really going to be crucial in terms of our retention efforts as well. And then just overall promoting a positive workplace for our school cultures. I shared in cabinet that you can measure your school culture by how your teachers feel on a Sunday night before they go into their classroom on Monday. So promoting a positive workplace culture. Next slide. So there's also some research around the effectiveness of principals. You know, given the magnitude and the impact of effective principals and the scope of their work, there's strong evidence to support that having an effective principal contributes substantially to student achievement. It is difficult to envision an investment with a higher ceiling on its potential return than the successful effort to improve principal leadership. And so we know that the teacher matters. Second to the teacher is the principal. And so those are two high levers that we will continue to support. Next slide. And so as we look to strengthen our instructional leadership and principal support, developing ways to empower principals as instructional leaders, focus on coaching our principals. Just as our educators should have differentiated professional development, so should our principals as well. Making sure we're continuing data-formed decision-making, and then also providing that high accountability, but that has to be coupled with a high level of support as well. Maximizing our time for instructional leadership and building support. If you recall, one of the entry plan action steps was to assess our leadership team meetings to ensure that they are effective. And I think at our last meeting last Wednesday was the first meeting that we moved to half-day principal leadership meetings. They used to be full day. And so the goal of that is to ensure that we're maximizing their time in their buildings. And so with this particular action step, we're looking to decrease the amount of time that we're pulling them out of the building. Also, who supports that instruction is our instructional coaches as well. And so looking at ways that we can ensure that our instructional coaches are not pulled out of the building as much as well. Enhancing central services supports for school leaders and ensuring that central services serves as that we're essentially providing customer service. Pleased to announce, I think beginning in November, during our monthly leadership team meetings, we began a series of providing professional development and reminders to central services staff around supporting our buildings. You know, initially we heard the sometimes the frustration or a lack of support or the how long it takes to get a response from central services. And so we began to engage in professional development for our central services staff. Also, in the near future, we will administer a survey. As you know, all of our buildings conduct teacher working condition survey. We're looking to administer a survey to our principals to give us feedback on our areas of strength in terms of supporting them, but also some areas that we could do a better job of. Enhancing our, you tapping your fingers over here, enhancing our principal pipeline programs, strengthening our assistant principal professional development, ensuring that they're ready to take that seat. That's our pipeline. When we're looking for a principal, we should look right in the seat of our assistant principals. As well as we have teacher leaders that have their administration certifications and degrees. What are we doing to make sure we're investing in their growth so that they're ready to move into the assistant principal position, as well as our instructional coaches? And then enhancing overall district operations, developing and implementing just standard operating procedures across all departments to ensure consistency, efficiency, and accountability. Next slide. If you recall, discipline was an area that came up in some of the feedback. There's an African proverb that says that a child that is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And so if we think about that, how are we creating environments that are warm for all of our scholars? And so some work that's already underway. We got some great feedback from our Superintendent Student Advisory Council around revisions to the discipline policies. And so we will continue to conduct that comprehensive review of our student code of conduct as well as those discipline policies. And also examine those policies for that subjective language that came up at a previous board meeting, ensure that that language is removed so that discipline outcomes are no longer predicated on race, exceptionality, or socioeconomic status, or other identities. And there's going to take a tremendous amount of professional development there as we continue to work with our administrators and teachers on effective classroom management and engagement strategies, as well as restorative practices. We've already implemented and began regular accountability checks, so that will continue, but we'll also have an increased focus, not only at the district and building level, but also in this room, how we track discipline data across all of our schools. Next slide. Trust came up, as you saw, so working to rebuild trust with the community. We will launch a superintendent's open forum where I will hold quarterly town hall meetings that will engage parents, teachers, and students directly. And so there will be some that will be devoted just for teachers and staff, some for students, some for parents, and some for community members. We haven't got the flyer out yet, but on April 22nd, we will have our first community safety forum. So more to come on that. Continue to work on our transparency measures and ensuring that there is an accessible dashboard to track progress of some of our key district initiatives. And those are discipline, how well we're doing tracking our discipline, academics, our academic performance. So whether you're a board member, a community member, and you have a thought at 12 o'clock at night, and you want to know, I want to know how we're doing with our out-of-school suspensions for our Hispanic students. We should have a dashboard that you could just go and look and see how we're doing there. Parent and family advisory councils. I have a superintendent advisory council for students, teachers, and principals. And so creating one for families as well as classified staff will be forthcoming as well. And we're always working to improve our communication and timely responses, as well as strengthening our community partnerships. You may have heard we have a new website that is coming up March 31st. So, and an app. So be on the lookout for that as we work to improve communication. As a matter of fact, that's on the next slide, which talks about boosting communication. Next slide. Having that consistent message throughout the school system, looking at ways we can provide technology upgrades, as I mentioned, our website and our mobile app, ensuring that there's a central hub for announcements and calendars was something that we noted as well. We will launch monthly superintendent updates, and this will be a monthly message from me, just a video message summarizing any type of key developments, challenges, celebrations, and any upcoming initiatives that will be forthcoming. And then also thinking about ways that we can expand our multilingual outreach. As you know, we serve a extremely diverse community, and so we're always thinking of ways that we can enhance our communication to meet the needs of all of our families, regardless of language. And so we will continue to expand that outreach as well. Next slide. Bolster our special needs support. We will do this by conducting a comprehensive assessment of our special education services to identify any types of gaps in service delivery, staffing in, resources, and training. What we know is there's a challenge to hire and retain EC staff. So how do we account that to ensure that we're still meeting the needs of our exceptional students? I was in a school the other day, went into an EC classroom, and there were 3 adults in that room, and I walked out in the hallway, and we kind of debriefed, and I asked the principal, I said, well, now, which one of those was an EC teacher? And she said, neither one of them. One of them is serving as a long-term sub. So knowing that we have that gap in terms of hiring EC's teachers, how can we look at our service delivery model to make sure that it's supportive of our current reality? But again, our goal is to ensure that all of our scholars have their service minutes and their IEP goals met, as well as their accommodations and modifications. So this is also going to take increased training for staff, not only for our EC staff, but also for our general education and support staff as well, particularly on the around effective IEP implementation strategies. Also bringing our families along, family support programs to ensure that our families see their role in this process as well. But then also thinking about ways that we can involve our school communities and broader communities by exploring unified sports. You're familiar with unified sports? And so unified sports are ways that our EC students can participate in some additional sports with their non-disabled peers. And so it's actually in many states, and I talked to someone that worked with Special Olympics, and it is available around in this area. And in many states, it's a part of the state's high school athletic association. And so the goal of that is to just foster more opportunities for inclusive settings, as well as a program called Including People Selflessly, which is some high school programs. Again, just to create more opportunities for all of our students to be able to accept differences. Almost done. Next slide. Improving school facilities and safeties. As you know, we are on the tail end of our comprehensive needs assessment, facilities needs assessment, and so that's part of that action step there. Security enhancements. We are always looking at ways to enhance community and safety, mental health resources and supports. Is it on this slide or maybe the next one? Yes, on the next slide. Facility repair and upgrades, and making sure that our schools are on some type of cycle as we think about deferred maintenance going forward. Expanding digital access, and then long-term planning. Next slide. Fostering student well-being and school climate, expanding our mental health support services, always advocating for more funding there to hire more counselors, social workers, and psychologists to provide direct support to students that may be in crisis. Partner with HEART. I had a great meeting with them probably about 2 weeks ago. They are interested in just providing that additional layer of support for our schools, supporting our students by implementing surveys. And so when we think about just student well-being and safety, ensuring that every student has at least one adult that they are connected to in every single school. And so we'll implement a survey to get that data to ensure that if there is a student that feel like they do not have an adult, that they can tell, something that they're experiencing, whether it's at home or at school, that trusted adult, then we'll begin to pair those students up with a trusted adult. Then seeking ways to recognize and appreciate our staff for their contributions. Wow. Next slide. I don't think I could have said it any clearer here. Fixed transportation issues. And of course, when we did this listening and learning tour, as I mentioned, we were in the thick of our transportation challenges. And so ultimately, you see this hashtag expect excellence. That's from every single department. It should be permeated throughout this school system, even as it relates to transportation. Our scholars and families should expect excellence as it relates to transportation. We are continuing with our route optimization. Work is continuing there, increasing our staffing in transportation to address our bus driver shortage. I have to give a huge shout out to our Durham Public Schools Foundation. I mentioned previously that they were looking at ways to support the cost associated with just a bus driver applying for a job and doing the physical and the licensing and everything. That was over $400. I got a text from Erica Wilkins the other day. As of the other day at 8 o'clock, they had raised $6,000 to support new bus drivers. Yeah. Had a meeting with the mayor today. I think there's some other synergy with some other initiatives that they have around some of our refugees and their being drivers that can support us as well. Creating a culture and to sustain the staffing, retaining and sustaining our bus drivers, a positive culture within our transportation department. So we'll facilitate a transportation engagement survey to identify areas that we're doing well in, but also those areas that we need to address as it relates to retention. And then expanding our community partnership. Again, childcare may be a barrier for a bus driver, a bus monitor to take on the job. Had a great meeting with the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club. They are they are willing to put a Boys and Girls Club or a few Boys and Girls Clubs at our elementary schools. That will help with the with transportation, because now families have additional options for before and after school care, but I also provide families with supports there as well. Okay. Huh. Next slide. Increasing financial transparency and accountability, advocating for increased state and local funding. I'll try to breeze through these. Ensuring transportation, transportation. You see what's on my mind. Ensuring transparency in budgeting. We have launched at least 2 parts of our dollars and decisions. Part 3 is coming out tomorrow. Is that the video? Oh. Okay, budget calculator. When is the video coming out? Okay. All right. So I'm still excited about part 3. And so I hope those have been helpful for our staff and our community. The reason I was excited about am still excited about the video. I'm excited about all parts, but one of the members of my Superintendent Advisory Council, Gianna, over at Hillside, interviewed Jeremy Teeter at the bank at Hillside. And so I'm excited about that. Did you get her blinds yet? Okay, awesome. All right, she reminded me of that yesterday as well. She needs some blinds in the bank there. So that's addressing just the transparency in budgeting. I think the more that we educate our staff and our community around our budget, that will help as well, continue to help. Launch a public-facing finance dashboard. So we'll create an online platform that tracks how our district funds are spent and allocated. Conducting a resource allocation review. Jeremy has started some of that already. Streamlining our financial policies to modernize some of our outdated financial reporting systems. Conducting program effectiveness reviews, and then holding leadership accountable for outcomes as it relates to spending. I have to tell a funny story as I shared with you. When something comes across my desk to sign, I'm asking questions and sending it back. What is this? What is this? The other day, driver's education vehicles came across my desk, and I remember seeing Toyota Corollas in our transportation lot that we're using for our driver's education. Well, this was to purchase 2 Camrys. And I said, well, that's a little bigger than a Toyota Corolla, and I know it's more expensive. So I called Deb and said, hey, what are we doing here? We need to be saving money, but those funds are earmarked for driver's ed and can only be spent. So I'm sorry, I can only be spent for driver's education. So we will spend those money, but please know that we are looking at every single dollar that we are spending. And so I know I may be giving people headaches here, but we have to do that. Next slide. Okay. Elevating family engagement and partnership, expanding our parent involvement initiatives. As I shared, I meet monthly with our Durham Council of PTAs. We also will talk about, and we've already talked about with them, about creating more ways that families can be engaged. And that engagement may not be attending a school-sponsored event, but how can I be engaged in my child's education in another way? And as I also mentioned, creating a parent advisory group. Improving two-way communication and creating mentoring opportunities to ensure that all of our scholars have at least one mentor outside of Durham Public Schools. And so we'll continue to work there as well. Next slide. These are the last 2 slides on the action steps. And they're about us, strengthening our governance team. Continue to engage in transparent communication as a governance team, myself and our school board. Transparent communication by consistently sharing important information as it relates to updates and decisions, ensuring that there's open, honest communication, timely communication with all stakeholders. Continue to work toward building mutual trust through collaborative decision-making, and then we talked about this at our retreat, keeping the district's mission as our North Star in all of our decisions. And so that's why I'm also excited to have our student board member here as well to remind us of that not student board member, our student representative, to remind us of that North Star. Next slide. Continuing to provide professional development opportunities as we enhance our leadership and governance skills, prioritizing open dialogue with the community, and then conducting, I like this one, I know you will too, conducting efficient and effective board meetings by setting clear agendas, Time limits, that's not up there, I included that. Staying focused on key priorities, remaining student focused, and fostering a collaborative environment that encourages productive discussion and timely decision making. And there's a mention of the Superintendent Student Advisory Council member to attend and engage in conversations and offering their perspectives for board member consideration as they make decisions. All right, last two slides. So those were all of the priorities and action steps going forward. And if you recall, there was another action step as well that related to what I call strategic plan enhancements. And so forthcoming will be information as a result of the post-entry plan. What are the implications for the strategic plan? And so we have a document that's geared toward how will we enhance and align our strategic plan based on some of the priorities that were just mentioned here. Had an opportunity to get some feedback from our strategic plan, what do we call them, leaders, champions, as well as looking through this feedback to see where are some ways we can enhance. So what you'll see is the enhancement as relates to the priority and the rationale or reasoning behind that enhancement. So that's a document that will be forthcoming. And our final slide is just the final commitment from me. And I do believe this, that we are at a turning point, that we will continue to take bold action as we think about moving this district forward. Yes, we have been through some challenges these past 8 months. But there have also been opportunities through those challenges for us to strengthen our school system. And so as we think about just these next years moving forward, please know that I'm committed to moving with a sense of urgency and accountability as it relates to creating that system. I often say setting the system up for future success that will outlive all of us. And so as I have been blessed to serve in this role, when I look back at my time in Durham Public Schools, what can I look back and say, we were able to accomplish this? And I take that same message to my advisory councils. I don't want to look at those as just checkbox activities. And I shared with them, with my teacher advisory council just yesterday, no, the day before, because we shifted their commitment instead of just 1 year, it's 2 years. So what can they look back and say, after my 2 years on the Superintendent Teacher Advisory Council, we were able to accomplish this. And I do believe still that Durham Public Schools can become the premier school district in the country if we continue to keep our students and families at the forefront. Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. And all the time that you took was absolutely, thank you. It was absolutely appreciated.
Thank you.
All the detail, all the work that's gone into it, everything that it meant. We wanted to hear every single word of it. So thank you for staying in the time and thank you for all you shared.
Not a problem, not a
Colleagues,
problem.
do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Myers, if you have any reflections or questions you would like to ask, we would love to hear from you. No pressure, but if you would like to speak.
Thank you for that. I really enjoyed the entry plan. I thought it was amazing. I would like to mention that maybe we could talk about infrastructure at our schools. I know I've heard from my peers at the Student Advisory Council that a lot of students have issues and worries about the infrastructure of their schools. So maybe, I understand it's not an immediate thing. It won't be fixed tomorrow. It won't be fixed next month, even next year. I understand that entirely. But it is something that a lot of students are concerned about. And I do think, it should be spoken about eventually.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And that is something that, every scholar in this school system should walk into their buildings with their chest out, that this is an amazing facility, school from a facilities standpoint. There was an announcement that was made today by the governor that may help us with that in terms of bond. But we are actively working to identify and address those areas that we need to address to ensure that you're proud of your classroom, your school, and you don't see paint chipping off the wall and the likes. And so we have a team in place that's ready and willing to tackle that. Obviously, funding is needed to address all of our buildings, but we will continue to prioritize our facilities. Thank you for that question, that comment.
Board members, any other discussion or questions? Ms. Carter-Otten?
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I'm very excited about all aspects of this. So really appreciate the attention to detail, and I really look forward to seeing all of this come to fruition in the coming years. It feels ambitious, and I'm really excited to see and to work with you to move all of this forward. And as I was trying to pick things that stood out to me as being particularly exciting, it was difficult to narrow it down. Really, but I'll try to name a few. Really thrilled about the review of the student code of conduct, and in particular looking at subjective language that could result in discrimination based on different aspects of someone's identity, and in addition to more professional development for educators on classroom management and restorative practices. The quarterly town hall meetings that you're planning sound super cool. So excited to see those roll out. And let's see, dashboards. You know, we like looking at data, so that is pretty exciting. The special education audit. I think all the steps that you've proposed for bolstering special needs support are going to be pretty incredible once they get moving. The audit, the family support programs to help families navigate the system and be engaged and be able to support their students. And then lastly, under the financial transparency and accountability, the program effectiveness review, seeing where we're producing measurable results, and equitable resource distribution. So looking at to ensure that all schools, you said, receive adequate and equitable funding, especially those with greater needs. So that's exciting to see that lens applied to how our schools receive funding, and looking at how that improves outcomes over time. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Umstead?
Thank you, Ms. Harold Goff, and thank you, Dr. Lewis, for such a comprehensive plan. As I was reading through, I was like, this touches almost, I think, every section of our district, which I think is really important and vital and will keep us busy, but has high expectations, which I think is really important. And as you said, this is a turning point, so I can see this turning us in the right direction. Since Ms. Carter-Otten listed all the things that she likes, which I agree to, I'm going to give you a couple questions that I had and things to consider. Throughout here, you talk about culture, and you talk about culture. I heard a lot for the adults, but I didn't hear us talk as much about culture for schools and students. And I know that is more explicitly a part of our strategic plan, and I wonder where the alignment also is here. I think if we're wanting to increase that academic achievement, we got to have a culture where students want to be. And I think that taps into some of our goals around absenteeism, around suspensions, whatever, creating a really positive school culture that's inclusive of everybody. So that's my comment on that one. And then the other thing that I wanted to note is we use special needs throughout your presentation, and I know we tend to use exceptional children and try to put the student first, so student with exceptional who qualifies for exceptional children's services. So that might just be a small thing that we want to shift to align. And then the last thing, or no, two more things. Sorry. In their academic excellence, we know that the pillar is around equity for DPS, and we talk about diversity, but I didn't see it explicitly listed under that academics. I think it's in that last bullet on the PowerPoint. So I'm wondering, how do we get thinking strategically and explicitly about how this instructional framework works to support a majority students of color district? I think about Dr. Bullock, who was here earlier this evening, who often talks about DPS can't be the premier school district for educating students of color. Like, we have what we need here, and how do we get really intentional about being strategic around frameworks that are about supporting majority students of color in our district, which we also know will support the white students in our district.
Yeah.
So that was it. And then my really last comment is you mentioned a dashboard. Where do you see it living? I was wondering.
Which one?
I guess all of them, maybe. I don't
On
know.
our website.
Okay.
You know, those things that we can do public facing, that we can put out there on our website. So for example, I think I was hearing that we previously did not have a budget and finance full blown out website. I think with the new website, I'm looking at Sheena, we do have a budget and finance tab and a section. Jeremy's clapping. And so that will live there. And I had a conversation with Jeremy about this dashboard, and I think I was sharing with him, I think it was Jeremy or somebody else. Talk about the fire equipment. No, okay. Anyway, I was sharing with him about a dashboard that a city government had used, and I was looking at it, and there was this fire. You remember now? Okay, there was this fire and equipment line that maintained right here over the years, and then it also all of a sudden shot up. So as a citizen, I'm questioning: are we spending money on fire extinguishers? This was a city government, but then once I clicked on it, I was able to see, oh, this is the year they bought a fire truck. So it's that type of transparency that we want to look for. And then our academic dashboard would also live on our website. We do have the Hanover equity dashboard, which is, I speak for myself, challenging to navigate. And I don't know if everyone in the district knows about that, but coming up with a way to ensure that we are able to share our reality in terms of academics.
I appreciate that. I think that's all helpful. I'm glad you mentioned the equity dashboard because I was going to mention that. Something that a lot of folks work to get up and running. And I don't think it's been updated. I was playing around with it early with 2024 link data yet. So that or something different. And I think something that, as you were talking, it made me think timeline for all of our goals.
Yeah.
And we might want to do here's some short term and here's some long term. I think because to build what we want to build, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some trial and error. It's going to be come play with this website, see what you think, so we can work to improve those dashboards. So thank you for all the listening and learning. Thank you, Durham, for coming to all those sessions and synthesizing this into something that we can put a plan to. So thank you.
Just to comment on some of the other pieces that you mentioned, and we talked about the culture of students. We had some interesting conversations yesterday with my Superintendent Student Advisory Council, and we were talking about some of the panorama data. We have about 43% of our 6th through 12th grade students feel like they have some sense of belonging. And one of the students said, you know, those are just numbers, you know, you all need to come and talk to us, you know, the people behind the numbers. And I shared with the student that I was reading a book, and it's called Street Data. And I said, that's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, we have the data, but what is the story behind the data? You know, and so creating additional opportunities beyond the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. And I know our principals, you know, are in tune with their students, but making sure that that gets to this level as we are making major decisions. And a good thing is this post-entry plan will be on the superintendent's page on my website. And it's I can't remember the tool, but we can make those tweaks that you suggested as relates to. And then just acknowledging the tremendous amount of work that was done prior to me getting here around the Black and Hispanic plan that will kind of help guide and move some work forward.
Ms. Byers. And then Ms. Chavez.
Dr. Lewis, I want to start with just thanking you. You came to Durham at a time that we were still living in challenge, and you have your document shows how much you've just joined this community, made yourself at home in this community, and listened and engaged with our community, which is our beloved community, but also a challenging community, because all of these things that you've captured here, we want them done, like all of us want them done immediately. And so I think the part that I think is going to be important as we work together as a team is for us to continue to listen to you about the priorities and where you can make the biggest impact on students the fastest. and how this aligns with strategic plan. So I'm looking for ways that we can make space for you to lead and drive change in the most impactful way for students as we go forward with what I think is really, really ambitious work. I think folks will be excited and they will feel affirmed that you listen to all of that. And I know you've got a strong team and you're still building and reorganizing your team to tackle a lot of this work. So I'm glad that Ms. Myers is here and reminded us about the need for infrastructure improvements. We might want to talk explicitly about regular bond project and those kind of things. I know those conversations are coming soon when the CIP comes in a couple of months. But I think it'll be important for our community to see that we're working on the physical as well as the student-focused work. One piece that I don't know if you're explicit about, but I think you are, is I still have for years been wanting an equity audit of what we're doing in academics at each school. What, making sure that if AP classes are available at 2 high schools but not 3 others, what are we doing to address that urgently? But it's also the arts, it's also athletics, and making sure that the opportunities for our students are not defined by zip code, and continuing to break those systemic barriers and expose them. So I look forward to just increased transparency on all of that as you drive this transparency that is so needed to rebuild trust in this community. Do you want to, like, one of the things I heard you say at a listening session that I think it's helpful to hear is you said, and maybe I want to make space for you to say it again, some of this will be low-hanging fruit, even fruit on the ground. Some of this will take 1, 2, 3 years. Like, this is systems change that you're leading. So do you want to speak explicitly to the timing and how?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, coming in knowing that the district had already, typically when a new superintendent come in, there may not be a strategic plan, and they use this data to launch a strategic plan, honoring the work that was already done in the strategic plan, but also reserving the right to tweak the strategic plan and infuse some of this through 2028. And so what I was mentioning when I said that is there are some unique opportunities immediately, things that we can do. I call that fruit on the ground, and that's, we think about the things that I would hear coming in. I can't get anybody to answer the phone or return my email. That's fruit on the ground. We can address that. That's something that we control. But then there will also be some things that will be infused in the strategic plan that may take 2 or 3 years. Some of these action steps may take more than a year to accomplish. But there are also some things that we can put in place in the immediacy. So yeah, there's fruit on the ground, there's low-hanging fruit, and then there's fruit that's still growing.
I appreciate that so much, and appreciate your continuing to make this transparent on the website and the new and improved website. People will be referring, I think, to this entry plan for years. Some words that I would like, if you still have some time to strengthen and beef it up, it just occurred to me just from some of our public comments, but the language justice and making sure that we are doing everything we can in that space, and even sustainability and climate, because those are areas that we've made progress, but we want to also continue to accelerate progress and not overlook. I look forward to your alignment and your leadership, and I really want to just thank you for listening and engaging so deeply with our community, and welcoming the voices of our critics, who often have the best ideas. And so that is a very Durham thing. And so I just wanted to appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I also want to thank you for this robust process and work to get here. One of the many important things I think about what you are bringing now is that systems work. And I said this to you one-to-one, but I'll say it here. When the board gets an email complimenting that something ran efficiently, that is great. And we did get that email. And so it's nice to get to see some of the systems changes already taking place, and so I look forward to just having an even more well-oiled machine that serves our children and all children. I also wanted to lift up one of the things that you discussed when you interviewed with us, which moved me, was you talked about not only the graduation rates, but the kids who did not graduate, the numbers for each year. And I see that kind of value of looking at who is left out in this plan. And it just feels like a very accurate representation of what we need to do. So obviously you had lots of input, from parents and community. But it really, I think, very much hits the mark. I wanted to make a particular comment around the enhancing the alignment of curriculum instruction and assessment. I think that is very needed. I wanted to say that I think, as we are dealing with these trying times and thinking about all the ways in which we may be restricted, one of the reasons I became an educator and serve on the board now is because I believe that schools and education can be places of healing, and to use what our former board member Lewis lifted up, liberatory education, liberation. And so and there's a lot of power in curriculum, which is why schools are a battleground. One reason that they are such a battleground, I think, politically. But we have focused a lot on operations for the past year. So I look forward to what you will bring us around curriculum. If you did the time percentage, it would be very high on the operations side. So that piece, I love the focus on developing leadership, the partnership with Heart, that's great. And the equity and access piece, wanted to lift that up as well. I think, well, we just passed or on consent the overnight field trips, or acknowledge them. I guess we didn't decide on them, but and we're going to talk about summer programs, things like all these extra things. A lot of that, to me, is where some of the disparities lie. In some of our programs, some of our extracurriculars, who has access to those, who's participating. So I am looking forward to also your analysis of that data and what that tells you and what you do with that. I wanted to mention with strengthening partnerships, something I've been thinking more about is organizing, especially in this time, again, this political time that we are in. And I see a place for meet and confer in this, thinking about our labor organizing, leaning into that. I also am thinking about our parent organizing and other community organizing that is taking place, and that is really a source of a resource for us. So we have businesses, universities, nonprofits. Beyond that, there are other types of networks that I think are really important for us to connect with and lean into the expertise of and all of that. So those are all of my comments. Thank you so much.
Mr. Tab?
Thank you very much. Dr. Lewis, thank you so very much for your report. Protocol has already been said and everybody have said a lot of the things that I wanted to say, but I will uplift two things. One is the teacher and staff working condition survey. I know those are not out yet. So I would love for you to take a really, really deep dive into analyzing those surveys, and so that we can see how that's going to drive us into teacher and staff retention. That's very important to us. And so I'm looking forward to seeing you give us even more information about that once that comes out. And the second thing is, thank you so very much for the safety forum. That's very, important. especially in the climate that we're living in. But I would want to ask, are you including wellness in that as well? Because I know it said just safety, but I would like to uplift with the mental health and a lot of things that's going on. Are we gonna, is that gonna be part of it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When I talk about safety, it's more than just the hardening of schools or our lockdown procedures, but it's how does a student feel in a algebra 2 class? Do I feel safe to learn? Do I feel safe knowing that I have my social worker down the hall I can go talk to? And that was one of the reasons I included in that safety piece, ensuring that all students, and we have a way to identify that all students have at least one caring adult. So yes, mental health is a part of safety as well.
Thank you. I would just like for that to definitely be highlighted so that people will know it's more than just the security.
More than just keeping weapons out of the
Out
yeah,
of school,
absolutely.
yes. And so those are the two things I would like to highlight. It's a really, really great report. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I will just say on the teacher working condition survey, that came up in my superintendent advisory council for my teachers around their use of the data. I also talked to a principal the other day about best practices and how they use the data. And as I shared earlier, teachers, you won't continue to get a high participation rate if teachers know you're not looking at that data. And so what we can continue to encourage our leaders to do is share that data. Turn the mirror on you and see how can I improve my culture here in showing the data. These are the three areas that were our three strengths. Thank you for taking the survey. Now let's dive into the three areas that we want to focus on. It was noted, I'm using this example here, it was noted that 22% of the staff here feels like they're not a part of decision-making. Let's turn and talk to your neighbor. How can you be a part of decision-making? Okay, create a survey box. Perfect. We'll create a survey box in the office. So now they know, hey, the leader is listening to me. And so if we ensure that teachers are taking the survey, but then as leaders, how do we turn the mirror on ourselves, but also take that data back and improve that data?
Thank you. And I also would extend my hand to you again to say, in our one-on-one, I would love to dive even more into the safety and wellness with you. And to any other school board member who'd like to talk more about the safety, I'm really open to that and looking forward to it.
Right, if there's no more discussion, I would just like to say again, I'm just really excited. I was excited for this conversation. I was excited for this presentation. I'd like to thank you for what I saw lifted up was a real high lens on student achievement and moving the district forward, and really looking forward to part of the ship turning, because you're really turning a really large ship, um, to our North Star and getting back to these discussions on student achievement. I personally do not mind spending time on this. Look forward to all of the really dynamic data and updates that will be coming in the future around how all of these things are moving, and excited to support. So.
I could just make some closing remarks. That you mentioned turning that ship. I don't turn the ship by myself. It's a huge shout out to our cabinet who put in many hours, and has helped us gotten us to this point. We're not there yet, but I was telling someone earlier today that I see a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not a train light, but I know that we are moving in the right direction. And with the team that we have the team to help us turn this ship. And I just want to give our cabinet a huge thank you for the work that you all do and the commitment to Durham Public Schools.
Thank you, Cabinet.
Yeah,
thank you,
Cabinet.
administration.
Yes. And one piece I did not mention, I don't want anyone to think that we were tone deaf to that. But within the support teachers and staff, there is mention in an action step and it's something to advocate for state and local funding to include master's pay and increase our supplements.
There's a whole lot.
Yes.
I would encourage anyone who is interested to take the time and read it if you haven't already, because there's a lot there to process.
And our OPA, Tony Cunningham, Sheena, for making it look, what I call making it look sexy.
Thank you, Sheena. More sexy, please. All right. Next on the agenda, I love this agenda today. Former arts teacher. We have our proclamation, Arts in Our Schools Month. Would we like to start on one end? Oh, thank you. And Les Turner.
Good evening, Chair Harold Goff, esteemed members of the DPS Board of Education, Superintendent Lewis, the Durham community. Tonight, we invite the board and our community to commemorate all of the outstanding arts education happening right here in Durham Public Schools with this year's proclamation of Arts in Our Schools Month. This is an annual celebration from the U.S. Department of Education, honoring the achievements of students nationwide in music, dance, theater, and visual arts. Our students and art teachers uplift and inspire our community with their extraordinary talents every day and all year long. But in March, a month dedicated to the arts offers us a chance to rejoice in the boundless creativity of our students, the dedication of our amazing arts teachers, and the unwavering support of our community art partnerships. The arts not only provide an outlet for self-expression, contributing to the increased student well-being and sense of belonging, but also serve as a catalyst for learning across all disciplines, aligning directly to our DPS strategic plan and two of Dr. Lewis's priorities from his entry plan, enhancing academic excellence and rigor, and of course, fostering student well-being and school climate. Durham Public Schools is steadfast in its commitment to ensuring equitable universal access to arts education for our DPS students, fostering a culture where every child's creativity can flourish without limits. This semester alone, we will host band, solo, and ensemble, elementary all-county chorus, our destination dance event, middle school all-county orchestra, as well as visual art shows at South Point Mall, and even an art teacher exhibition at the Durham Arts Council. Most recently, we all celebrated the monumental talents of over 350 of our DPS young artists with our annual Evening to Shine event, and I could not be more proud of the excellent student contributing and celebrating their efforts shared in partnership with the DPS Foundation. As a district, we support over 20 district-wide arts event experiences, which is more than any district around Durham, and I would wager across the state of North Carolina. In thinking about our district-wide events, I want to take a moment to say thank you to our Board of Education members, our Superintendent Lewis, our DPS senior leadership, cabinet members, our school administration, and of course our community for continuing to support with your presence at our district level arts events. It does not go unnoticed that you are taking the additional time to join us each month as we celebrate yet another group of young artists from across Durham. So thank you for being a part of our young artist journey here in DPS. Chair Harold Goff, I respectfully yield the floor to you and the esteemed board members to unveil this year's proclamation celebrating Arts in Our Schools Month with profound joy and pride.
Mr. Tab, would you like to begin the reading of the proclamation and do the first paragraph?
I would love to. Thank you so very much. Proclamation for Arts in Our Schools Month. Whereas all students have the right to an arts education that includes dance, media arts, music, theater, visual arts, and performing arts taught by certified arts educators in partnership with community providers and
Whereas arts education is part of a well-rounded education for every student as outlined in the Every Student Succeeds Act, and
Whereas the purpose of this celebration is to raise awareness of the lasting positive impact of arts education on the academic, personal, and professional growth of our students. And
Whereas arts education helps nurture healthy, inclusive communities where all points of view are respected. And
Whereas arts education shapes the way our students understand themselves and the world around them, allowing for students to be culturally responsive, and
Whereas arts education supports the social and emotional well-being of students and fosters a more positive, safer school environment, and
Now therefore be it resolved that the Durham Public Schools Board of Education does hereby proclaim March 1st through 31st, 2025 as Arts in Our Schools Month, and ask all to celebrate the importance of arts in our schools' lives, in our students' lives, I'm sorry. Signed the 13th day of March, 2025. Colleagues, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept this proclamation.
I second.
Been moved by Mr. Tabb, seconded by Ms. Harold Goff. Is there any discussion? Ms. Chavez?
I just want to say thank you for all you do. It's really important. It's critical. Sometimes the arts get overlooked, but they are necessary to the human spirit. So thank you.
I'll just take the lead of Dr. Lewis here, and it's really the arts teachers that's making it happen. So we really
Thank you to the arts teachers.
Mr. Tabb?
And thank you so very much. The only thing I would say that's missing in this proclamation is that we need money in the budget for the arts. There we go.
I agree.
All those in favor of passing the proclamation for Arts in Our Schools Month, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Don't say anything. In Durham. It passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is the salary administration and employees compensation. Ms. Hager, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Rogers, Vice Chair Carter Otten, board members, Dr. Lewis, and DPS community. The Salary Administration Policy Working Group made up of various DPS employees, including both certified and classified staff from across the district, which convened in May 2024, has experienced some transition, weather delays, et cetera, and along the way, even added some additional voices to this great work. We are committed to competitive compensation, fair placement, equitable administration, and recognition of relevant experience. And with that, administration presents Policy 7502, the Salary Administration and Employee Compensation, for a second reading. Next slide, please. Policy rationale. So this policy that we're bringing forward is to ensure transparency regarding fair, consistent, and lawful employee compensation. Some of the key elements of this policy will include definitions, procedures, and legal compliance. Next slide, please. Again, our guiding principles, ensuring competitive compensation. It's something that we've heard much about, especially even in Dr. Lewis's post-entry plan. Fair placement, equitable administration, recognition of relevant experience. And I would even like to add just rebuilding the trust of our DPS staff. Next slide, please. The purpose of this policy 7502 applies to all forms of employee compensation, including their base salary, raises, base bonuses, and extra duty pay. This policy is also to ensure that payments are authorized by the Board of Education, but doesn't exclude reimbursements and payments for independent contractors. Next slide, please. So this list, or this next slide, shows us just the members of the policy working group, the Salary Administration Policy Working Group, which convened in May of 2024. We have experienced some transition. There was a prior assistant superintendent of HR. It started during her tenure and transitioned over to my leadership once I came on board in January. And as with any working group, you're going to have folks that come on the group, come off the group, attend when they're able to attend, but this is the group of folks that have been invited to to join the group, and we have added folks along the way. So the group is made up of several different staff members, both certified, classified, and our next meeting, one of the things that we were challenged with during that transition had to do with just trying to get the group together. So we meet virtually, but our next in-person meeting, which was supposed to happen when it snowed, will be held on March 20th at Staff Development. Next slide. Our goal is to ensure that this policy identifies key terms and definitions for consistency. That is crucial. Next slide. So one of the things that we've really tackled during this work has been around extra duty pay, really just trying to streamline what the process is, make sure that it's clear, make sure that everyone knows how to receive extra duty pay so that administrators know what the process is. Staff members who may be called to do extra duty pay understand the rules. So it is work outside of an employee's regular job description performed outside of regular hours. And then we go on to show what that approval process will look like. Next slide. Athletic pay, we also want to make sure that there's clear communication around athletic pay. And I know I've received, or we've received, questions around athletic pay. So that is an area we want to make sure that that is clear as well. There will be annual step increases. So for bullet 2, it's really annual step increases, not at the end of each season. So we just need to make sure that that's clear. And coaches are paid at the end of each season. So if it's the fall, winter, then they're paid at the end of that season. If it's the spring, summer, they're paid at the end of that season. But the annual step would travel with them through the whole year. So it wouldn't increase in the middle of the year. Next slide. All compensation changes will be documented in personnel files. And right now, the procedure that we use with the employee personnel action form that we work closely with Mr. Teeter's department, finance, to make sure that anytime there's a change or an adjustment, that originates in HR and then travels to finance. So that's processed, and then that form ends up in the employee's personnel file. Next slide. The next slide goes on to talk about general salary increases. So for certified, classified, and administrative employees, changes as authorized by the North Carolina General Assembly. Supplements for certified staff are voted on by the board, substitute teachers, and then bonuses. So we will lay out, make sure that language is clear around how those increases are administered. Next slide. So another place that we want to make sure that there's clear guidance for staff, just how new hires are placed on the salary schedule. So teachers and other employees paid on the certified schedules, their salaries are based on their license, and those are provided to us by NCDPI. That's a licensure review, and that's based on their state certification. But for classified positions such as bus drivers, school nutrition staff, instructional assistants, et cetera, they're placed on the salary schedule, which is approved by the Board of Education, and their placement considers their verified years of experience, which we use a VOE form to verify their experience upon hire. Next slide. So still in process is the document. We want to bring clarity around the following areas. If someone's moved administrative, if there's an administrative change, someone moves from one position to another position, that's an administrative change versus a voluntary transfer. So if I decide that I'm going to move to another position, then I'm going to take on the position salary grade. So I want to make sure that that's clear. Rules around promotion, and then rules around reclassification. Following the salary study, we did receive lots of folks that reached out to us, to HR, Dr. Giovanni's office, finance to ask for us to look at their position to be reconsidered for reclassification. And we get those, receive those on an ongoing basis. And so that will be part of the compensation salary reclassification review committee. Next slide. We want to ensure that we're in compliance with laws, adhering to state and federal laws, including FLSA and the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction guidelines. And then, of course, the IRS requirements for employee compensation for all. And that is my last slide. And I just ask for any questions. And again, we're bringing this for second reading. So still a lot of work going into this policy. One of the things that we've heard loud and clear from the working group is that while we are anxious to get this done, we don't want to rush. We want to make sure this is a thoughtful, clear document that folks can go to and really have a resource. Like many times folks want to be able to just say, hey, Ms. Hager, where do I go to find transfer information, or where do I go to find this? And we want to make sure it's clear. Folks have had an opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Hager.
Thank you.
Colleagues, are there any questions, comments? Mr. Tab?
Thank you very much. Just a few clarifying questions that I have.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I have to turn this way too.
You're fine. Thank you.
I'm on your slide where it says extra duties,
Yes, sir.
but it says extra duties outside of job description, performed outside of regular hours. But there are employees that may do the job description during the regular school day, but are called in on weekends to do work. But it may be still part of their job description, but they're called in on weekends. How do you differentiate between the two?
Good question. Thank you for that. I think in part of the extra duty form, when we have to provide a justification for the work, so the extra duty form really outlines all of the things that would go into a description. So if it's outside of, or for, I think I received a question about how would what would extra duty look like for an elementary school teacher, right? And so if there's a vacancy and an elementary school teacher is called in to assist with, during their planning time with grading or helping with lesson plans, those would be inside. But if there were outside, that would be, let's say we have a teacher that's now asked to drive a school bus, right? When they are available. So it would be different for different purposes. So we just want to make sure that would be clear. I hope that helps.
It does help, but because it says outside of job description, that may make a employee hesitate to do the assignment because they may see it as still part of their job description, but you're asking them to come in doing hours that they would normally be doing that particular job description, which could be after hours, or it could be weekends. And I'm bringing this up because this has been brought up a lot, okay? So that's one thing.
Okay.
The other part to this is making sure that employees do understand the difference between what's considered supplemental pay and what is considered extended pay or extra duty pay. Because there are teachers, I'm gonna use the arts since I'm more familiar with that. Arts get supplements, but they are on a schedule in terms of how many things that they're supposed to do to receive that supplement. Once they exceed that, do they then move to extra duty pay because they have now fulfilled their duty of the supplement?
I am taking notes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Tab.
You're quite welcome.
That was actually a question that came up at our, just our last policy working group, was just making sure that the language around supplemental pay, extra duty, and actually the arts did come up during that conversation. So I appreciate that.
And I'll be glad to help have additional conversation about this to help out.
Duly noted.
All right.
Ms. Byer, did you have your? Oh, Is that-
Thank you, Ms. Hager, for this presentation. My first question, just for clarity, is that you're bringing this for second read, but you don't expect us to pass this tonight. Okay. Right. Okay.
Correct.
One of the questions that I raised, colleagues, in advance of this meeting that I wanted to share with you is if you're looking at the full policy, it's in section D. I'm trying to get to the right spot. Okay. Which page? Page 5. Yeah, section B. So it's D2B. D is in dog, B is in boy. I'm sorry, D2 and then B for boy. Around classified employee pay increases. There's a portion in this, it says subject to budget approval and funds availability. It is the intent of the Board of Education to grant an experience increase in addition to annual legislated pay increase to all classified employees who worked at least 6 full months the previous fiscal year for schools. And my question to Ms. Hager was, is this best practices to, in policy, assign the intent of the board? And is that portion really necessary, or is it sort of like implies that the board is going to do this or will review doing this? And obviously we can review whatever we want to annually. But is it enough just to say subject to budget approval and funds availability and not to assign base? So I think that is, because we can't lock into another board to what they might want to do.
Well, that's a good question, and it also has the words "in addition to the annual legislative." It's like the board in Durham's going to do something on top of the state.
Right.
Is that how you read it?
That's
Yeah,
how
yeah,
I read it.
Yeah.
And so I don't want us to pass a policy that says that that's what we're going to explore doing annually, because we can do that and will do that if we can, but I don't know. I want us to consider that. It felt like just saying subject to budget approval and funds availability was enough.
And Ms. Umstead?
I wanted to highlight that, but I was looking up in the step definition, in the definitions, because step increase is there. And it says refers to any raise paid annually and automatically to employees on a board approved schedule based on years of experience. And I'm gonna say this, I know it's not popular, but like, we can't guarantee it if we don't have the budget for it. So that definition gets a little tricky, and it's been the practice. So let me say that too. The practice in DPS is people were moving from step to step or expecting to move from step to step. And we know there's a lot of anomalies inside of that. And one of the hopes I was thinking about for this policy was to get clear around what movement looks like and when we move. And the board needs to approve a movement versus it being automatic. And that is, I feel that's not clear. And I'm so sorry to all of our employees. I would love to do it automatically, but we need to know that we have the budget to do it. So that part needs just, I think, to follow up on your point, Ms. Rogers, some clarity on that. I'm sorry.
No, thank you for that. And Mr. Teeter is also thanking you for that.
Any other comments? Are you, Ms. Umstead?
Thanks y'all again for, this is like a really important policy and taking a lot to consider. And there's always nuances in the, how many, 5,000 different roles and people that we have here. I have a couple of other questions that I can send you all to ponder a little bit later. But the main one that I wanted to think about was this doesn't clearly outline how people move or are placed on our salary schedules, right? So our salary schedules currently have mins and maxes, and if I'm an employee, I don't know how I get placed on that schedule in between a min and max on a step. And I don't know how I can move in between those either. And so how do we get clear about what that looks like? I think we've been hearing really loudly and clearly from our classified staff who aren't on this schedule. How are we moving? How do I place? How do I know when I'm gonna get increases? Like, what does that all look like? And so I just think there's a lot more work to do around improving and making that really clear, because it's not clear to me. And that also means it might not be clear to other folks. And then, sorry, let me add, and then along with that, like, step part, there's might be something different for classified versus certified too. So that might need to be separated in this salary administration policy. I think I'm done.
Ms. Rogers?
To follow up on Ms. Umstead's point of the mins and maxes, I wonder if we should be having conversations with our counterparts, HR counterparts at Duke and maybe at other, well, not local, but yes, at Duke. One of the things that they clearly state is if you come in with the minimum requirements, you start at the minimum and you can move. And then they have a series of expectations within HR as you are applying for other jobs at Duke, where you can end up in the mins and max and other pay scales. And that might need some clarity as people look for upward momentum within the district. And that might be something that you put into procedure as opposed to put into policy. But having that as a supplement might be helpful. And understanding how they're doing that, because they also do mins and maxes.
I see Ms. Chavez and then Ms. Carter-Alton.
I will just say I agree with this point that Ms. Umstead is raising. I think I also want to know, I've said this, but like what's, going on with the mins and maxes and everything. At Duke, I worked at Duke and they do have mins and maxes, but people negotiate their salary. And so it's a very different model than I think we're going for. But that's, yeah,
Some people negotiate their salaries. There's some of us that were not able to do that because it's the difference between certified and classified here.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's how some of the mins and maxes are used. And so it might be worth a conversation, but it's also a different model than I think we're going for on the whole. But of course, I'm sure you're looking at other models and, colleagues in this area, so.
Ms. Carter-Alton?
I'm dying to hear what Mr. Teeter has to say. So but I guess I'll frame that with a question that builds on these, which is, so I'm a staff person and, or maybe I'm considering working for the district, one of those two things. And I want to know where I get placed and how I move. So this policy we're working on is one piece of the information that people would look at, right? We currently also have some scales on the website. Together, I still can't I think we are having a hard time figuring out how this happens. And I was looking at other districts trying to figure out, do they have a policy that outline, like, is the language in policy? Is it in procedures? Is it a combination? So could you share with us, like, where will that live eventually in that package of information about, like, how much do we expect to be in this policy? And what else will accompany it to give that full picture of information? And then anything else you want to weigh in on related to these questions about this topic would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think a couple of comments, so thank you. So I think certified folks, right, kind of going back to those questions, we have to do what the state tells us to do where those certified folks are concerned. And, on occasion, they ask us to pause, right? So if the state budget has not been finalized when we start a new school year, we're directed to pause those steps until we get direction from the Department of Public Instruction. But then ultimately, we're going to eventually move folks up to their next step that aligns with their license with the state. Classified, right? Different districts have different strategies about how they go about those steps. A lot of times the step movement is performative in nature. Like, yes, we're going to acknowledge that you are now progressing from year 26 to 27. If there was not a change in compensation at the state level, that may not correlate into new money with that step change. We may simply step 27 in the new year might reflect what step 26 was before and so forth. Just depending upon the financial circumstances of the district. Some districts, if the state does nothing, they might ensure their employee at least gets a 1% adjustment of some sort between steps. I am very relieved that this policy was already under review before I came, because there is a lack of clarity in a lot of districts about how to go about this. And sometimes I have found that it's protocol that's on a sheet of paper in an HR director's notebook somewhere, and they don't remember how it got there or what the history was behind it. I think particularly as we have conversations about how much credit can we give, or are we going to give for experience that comes from other school systems, experience that comes from other state agencies, how much experience from relevant work in the private sector. And so I think those are all things that we think about, and it really is scattered all over the place, and it's an area for improvement for a lot of districts. And so I think it's incredible work that's happened across these two HR administrations to pull this together and bring that into focus. And so I'm looking forward to this being a governing document that we go to and we can crosswalk. And I think your question's got me thinking too of how can we even further craft this to make a simple crosswalk to those salary schedules that are online.
To follow up, so by that, do you mean a connection between the two so that one could look at the two of those things and fully understand what we're asking, which is if I'm a potential employee, here's where I go, or have a better idea of it. I know that there's some unknowns, but
Yeah, I think kind of knowing, I think particularly, I think we're seeing it more and more that folks are sometimes not willing to even apply or go through a process unless they know, like, is this worth my time to interview for this position? Where might I land? I think particularly our newer generation of workers, they're not going to pick up the phone and call and ask those kinds of questions. So I think the more that we can do to help people anticipate if it's worth their time or not to pursue a position with us with this information, I think is time well spent. Yeah.
I had a couple more questions, but did you have a follow-up to that? We also did want to, and I flagged this earlier, Ms. Hager, but I want to make sure that whatever we put out does clearly outline for folks, like how, if they got placed on the Erie versus that issue, where they're staying, like we had heard in public comment tonight, some folks are afraid about being moved down. So maybe just, I'm not sure how that gets addressed, but making sure that that's addressed in whatever our final version is of this or whatever other documentation.
Absolutely, and I think that's just part of the transparency and rebuilding trust, because those are definitely the conversations that we hear, Mr. Teeter and I hear, and are talking pretty much on a regular basis about how we educate our current staff, not just our new hires, but our current staff are still struggling with, they can't see themselves on the salary schedules that are posted. And so being able to respond to that, I think is going to be really important work that we do. People are still hurt is a fair word to use. And we hear that, and we're experiencing, even from folks on the policy working group, And so acknowledging that, and then how do we move forward? So we want to hear from as many folks as we can as we bring this policy to light.
Thank you. I so appreciate that perspective that you bring to this, Ms. Hager, and acknowledging the need for just continuing to focus on the transparency. And then the last thing that I'll say is, as I was reviewing this, I had plenty of things that stood out to me that looked great, and many that I had questions about, but I kept returning to like, but I don't, this is not, like, I'm not in the schools, or I'm not in these positions, so I don't have a lived experience with how this might impact me. So I'm glad that you have included folks in the working group to give feedback, and I hope that we'll continue to get feedback from the staff that are going to be impacted, because the expertise that y'all bring is so critical, and the expertise that those are going to be impacted by this at different levels of our organization is really critical too.
Thank you.
All right, I see, do you want to follow up on that question? I'll let Dr. Giovanni follow up, and then I saw Ms. Byer, and I saw Ms. Umstead, and Mr. Tab, and Mr. Tab, okay.
I just want to thank Ms. Hager and Mr. Teeter for their comments, but they are working very collaboratively. We do recognize the extreme frustration for those that are on the Crutchfield schedules and trying to figure that out. We talked about it last week, I think, or maybe earlier this week. I don't know. The days run together. But at some point in the last week or so, Mr. Teeter, Ms. Hager, and myself sat down and we're kind of trying to figure out, find a way forward for the staff that are on the Crutchfield amounts so that they can clearly see that what their amounts are, how they may or may not be increased. And I think that, and I don't want to speak out of school here, no pun intended, but I believe this board was very clear from the dais that no one would be getting less money. And so that is not something Dr. Lewis is, instructed us to do. Like, that's not a goal at all that anybody is pursuing with HR or finance to reduce anyone's funding. What we're trying to do is see a way clear with HR and finance to have schedules that anybody that works for Durham Public Schools can see where they fall. But that's going to take, I don't know what it'll take to get there. We weren't able to do it last August or September. And so, but we are still working on that, and that is a goal for us to be transparent. But I know that Ms. Hager and Mr. Teeter are very open and invite any employee to reach out to them to sit down if they aren't on the Erie scales, and they will go through and show them, this is where you were before, this is where you are now, these are the changes that were made in your salary. So I think they're both nodding their heads. They are more than willing, and their teams are more than willing to do that. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Was it Ms. Byer? Ms.
Yeah.
Byer. Mhm.
Thank you. There's so much about this work that is so critical, so informed by the place that we've come from, but also I feel like is needed to be at least passed for this budget cycle, right? So that we are at least establishing cleaner expectations for our own employees, and I want more input. I want to hear from all the employees, but I also think it's so urgent for us to get something solidified as we work towards more clarity and perfection going forward. An important part of this budget process for me is going to be better understanding of what y'all are modeling for this very group of employees, these two groups, right? We've got some people who are on salary schedules that are published that have clarity about how we're modeling and where they might go. And then I still don't understand how big this other group of Crutchfield or consultant kind of folks are. And then I would hope that our practice in the future would be to bring those together in some way, right? So that we have that clarity of tables for the future for all employees. So I don't know whether it's for this budget cycle or for the following, but I know it's sticky. You're making like,
Mr.
but
Teeter, well,
yes, I would love to hear where we're going with that.
So I think in the forecasting that we've done for the continuation part of the budget, we've looked at, right, so for our employees that are on the Crutchfield model, have those two lines on their pay, and we've considered both of those in applying what a state mandated raise might be. So we want to make sure that we acknowledge that. We definitely did not want to, because in some ways I see that differential line that's holding them to the Kerry Crutchfield table as it's different than when we think about a normal hold harmless situation. And so I think so in my math, we very much so included those Kerry Crutchfield differentials in our calculations to make sure that we're asking for enough money to ensure that part of the pay receives whatever state raise there might be. But then I think so part two of that of eventually creating a scale in the future where that additional line item is not necessary will be a tremendous lift for Durham. I think it is a large population, and some of those differentials are substantial on a monthly basis. So it's come up before in a past board meeting, and I hate to echo it, but it's going to require another study for us to work through that and see what that's going to look like. And definitely not this cycle. I think this cycle, we keep things moving and we acknowledge that differential. We apply whatever the state raise is going to be to that. And then we have time to collect ourselves and think forward to 26, 27 and what we can do with more intention and also be hopeful for a better budget cycle that season too. So.
I appreciate that, and that helps to know kind of what a puzzle it is and how important it's going to be for this superintendent and board team to continue to advocate for moving everyone and not back away from that commitment. I hope that it doesn't. I hope we don't have some people at a steeper curve where their raises are going to put them out of line with the tables that are published, and then morale issues amongst employees become even more challenging. So, it sounds like something we might need to tackle with grace and time. This other piece that seemed new to me was this rehire part. So if you leave but come back within 1 year, and 1 year is how'd y'all think about that time frame? Did you have any debate about if you come back within 1 year, you go back? I mean, can you?
So that actually came out of early on, just part of the discussion around when the new classified salary schedules came out. That was part of that discussion, is that if you left DPS and came back, then you would start back on the min, right? And it just seemed, we have a lot of folks that come, they decide to leave, and then they come back because DPS is the greatest place to work, and they turn back around. And so we do want to acknowledge sometimes that folks will make a knee-jerk move and are back, and we don't want them to go from, they've got 20 years and now they're back at zero. That's a really hard pill to swallow.
No, I appreciate that. I think when we do put that into policy, it'll be important to have clearly communicated to staff as they're thinking about the grass is greener somewhere else, and so that they know to come back quickly if they're coming back.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Umstead?
Yes, a couple other things to follow up on. In thinking just about what you were saying, Ms. Carter, often about like how people are placed, but how do people know what to be expecting? Part of me thinks some of that's not even in the salary administration policy. Like, is there other guidelines that help people make sense of our salary schedules? And I'm even just thinking about recruitment right now. Someone asked me if I come to DPS, what would I get paid? And they would be a classified, and I wasn't sure what to tell them. And that's actually not a good recruitment tool for us. And so thinking about, is there any kind of document that or something forward facing that we can say, even right now, this is how we're placing people on salary schedules, especially if you're in that classified category, more information to come or something like that. But I just think that's we're losing because people can't clearly see where they're going to be placed on that schedule right now.
Dr. Lewis, would you like to reply?
Is that something, as I continue to learn North Carolina policy work, Is that something that could live in regulations?
I think it needs to live forward face out wherever it lives. If I know that I'm going to work at DPS, I need to be able to click it and see it next to salary, right? Like if I go into the salary tables right now from classified, I see hourly mins and maxes. I see base salary mins and maxes, 10 months, 11 month, 12 month. But I have no clue where I'm going to fall within that min and max.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm not, and so to Mr. Teeter's point, I would have to go all the way through an interview, do all the background check, before I maybe found out what my salary would be. And that just feels like, as a recruitment tool, some people aren't doing all that, right? Because I don't know where I'm going to land.
Go ahead.
So the board did state that any new hires would start at the min during the board meeting, but your commentary regarding how people may move within the mins and the maxes is an area that the policy working group is continuing to work through. So that is, and I do agree with you, I think that's not clear, right? And unless you watch that board meeting, you know, which, I mean, they probably didn't.
And it still wasn't clear in the board meeting. I did watch it.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I wasn't here for that one.
Okay.
But it wasn't clear how you move within that.
Right, exactly. So I agree. I think that's well received. And so I think Ms. Hager and her team can kind of work on a draft that does set forth, you know, just for the recruiting piece, especially, right? I mean, they're out there at job fairs all the time. So that does need to be made clear where folks are on that Erie scale. So I think you got that, Ms. Hager. Okay.
I've got it, but also to your point, what that really means is when you go onto the salary schedules and right below, because a lot of the Erie schedules, the schedules that are posted, at the bottom, you'll see that there are positions that are listed. What we really need to make sure is that's clean and that someone could go there and say, I'm going to apply for an ECIA position, you know, where am I going to land? That I'm going to be placed on a minimum with my 10 years of experience and what that would look like. So I think for a lot of this too, we'll need to have examples. You know, folks will see if there's a scenario such as that, then people would be able to, you know, see themselves.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. And to the example that you just gave, someone gets through the process and then they're like, I have no idea how much I'm going to make. And so that's the feedback that we hear from our team. And so just making sure it's clear.
And then I wonder if there's a different memo or something that goes to the folks who are in this limbo. Because what I continue to hear is a lot of stress. Is this going to go away? What's going to happen? Da, 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 da. And like, we should relieve that stress if we know. And we should clearly communicate to them that differential means this. That differential is budgeted for. It is, you know, our goal is to never decrease you or something. Just clearly put that out there. Because I mean, we've had people come to our meetings week after week saying, and with concerns around that. And then, sorry, this is my last thing, Ms. Chavez, and then you can. When we were last year around this time, we were toying with the idea of step increases versus just a percent increase, right? So people were placed in the consultant Crutchfield's schedule, and it was like the board should approve a percent increase every year versus this step. And I don't know where we landed with that because it seemed like we went back to a step, but I don't. Anyway, I'm putting that out there as because it feels like since we have these people on two schedules, how do we navigate that moving forward? Sorry.
That for Dr. Giovanni?
Did you acknowledge me? Okay.
Yes.
You did, okay. So thank you, Ms. Umstead. So where administration understands the board to have landed is that raises would only be done when voted and approved a percentage by the board. So people still move up their step, right? Like, so next year, it's you have a person who was step 22 for 24, 25, and July 1 of 25, they moved to step 25, right? That's just their step that they move, but it does not tie to any money like it used to be on the scale that there was like this automatic raise. What it now says is that raises will only be based on a percentage as voted on by the board, which gives the board, they were kind of in the past, and what was shared, I know, and what was shared in the past is that the board was kind of, to Chair Ms. Rogers' commentary, I don't know if you're the chair tonight, so to Ms. Rogers' point of it, you can't mandate in policy that the board is going to give a raise. And so it says that the board, shall. We don't want that. What it does say in there now is that, let's say in July, or as part of this budget process, this board says that there won't be, they're not going to do a raise. People would still move up, but their salaries remain where they are until the board increases a percentage. So what I will say, as I'm saying it, and I'm looking at your face, I don't know that people can't see it, is that that needs to be made clearer. That, right, I'm saying it, and I'm thinking to myself, that clarity needs to be made. And I think Ms. Hager nodding also. So we will work on that and make sure it's clearer kind of how the raise process works with the percentages versus the steps, and just make sure that's crystal clear.
Right. Thank
Okay.
you for answering my next comment on that, because it's not, like, if I'm looking at steps and you tell me that I go to a new step, there's a new dollar next to it. And my assumption
now.
would be that's my salary now, right? And so I think that just needs to be unraveled and get really clear, because I also bet people are expecting next year, because we have steps and we would move a step, that I would get an increased salary based on that step. Will come real soon. So
Mr. Tab?
Thank you very much. Just quickly, I wanted to lift up equity. And so where I'm looking at athletic pay, I don't see where we have arts equity in this as well. So as we are moving athletic forward, please make sure, I would ask that we make sure that we move arts equity forward along with athletics, because this district has fought so hard to make sure that we bring it all in line. And I definitely do not want us to see us to go backwards. Because as I see step increases upon completion of a season, that means that athletics are going to continue to move forward in their steps. And if we don't move arts with it, then is going to put us behind again. And now we've got to advocate and fight to bring it back. And this district worked very hard to get it all aligned. And so thank you for doing the athletics. And I know they are very appreciative, but we can bring arts along with them as we're going. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you, Mr. Tab.
Thank you, Mr. Tab. We're going to wrap up this part of the agenda after we hear from Ms. Chavez. All right, Ms.
Okay.
Chavez.
That made me wonder just about having people from the arts and athletics in as part of the working group. And are there, and Ms. Umstead is throwing in payroll and finance. Yeah, no, but I guess any other areas that are left out, and I'm wondering now, are there other areas that get a like kind of supplement besides athletics and arts? Maybe not, but I was going to say also, in looking at the at the salary schedules again, I guess I'm not sure why we have the maxes up there or why it says min when it's just what it is. So I would just like offer maybe we could just take that out, because the max doesn't mean anything right now. Because we're not using it at all. And of course we can always change these when appropriate. And then and I also just wanted to say I also think it's very important to make it very clear that people are not moving up in steps. Yeah, I think that's really important. I'm glad that got brought up just now.
Thank you.
That is all. Thank you.
Ms. Rogers, you have a question?
Yeah, Ms. Chavez, can you help me, or maybe Ms. Hager? Ms. Chavez's question was, why do we have mins and maxes? So I thought new people that were starting, started at Men's, but there are people currently in place in the district that got pay increases previous years that are falling within the range of min and max, but aren't on the minimum on the scale. Do you understand my question?
I do. And so that's the folks that we're talking about that are, let's say they've moved from before they were on grade 72, right? And now they're at NC 13, right?
Okay.
Whatever that
Mhm.
is equal to. I don't have it up in front of me, but if they're on NC 13, then they're on NC 13. So if you were to go into their payroll record, you'll see the base, which is the minimum, which is that NC 13, and then the additional line, that's what Mr. Teeter was just talking about, which is the differential that they receive each month so that they don't receive lower pay.
Right, so that's part of why we still have the scales for Men's and Maxes. So when people look themselves up, they see that they're falling within the min and maxes, even though they're new hires that get the minimum.
But
Or
I
am I
think that people
misunderstanding
could be
that?
outside of that max.
They could be.
They could be outside of the
Oh.
max because they're on a completely different salary schedule than new people coming in.
Okay, that's helpful. That's what I wanted to understand.
I want to acknowledge Dr. Giovanni as we're trying to wrap up.
Yes. One of the reasons that what I got from Ms. Chavez is, can we consider it, like, what is kind of like just to think about it, right? That's what I took from her, right? And so I'm always like, let's think about it. But to Ms. Rogers' point,
I was just asking for clarification. I wasn't making a point.
to Ms. Rogers' point, where we are now, and this is going to be the work that Ms. Hager and Mr. Teeter are going to, and myself and Dr. Lewis and probably all of cabinet and other folks are going to have to wrestle with is, one of the positives of keeping the maxes is that for these kind of these kind of one-offs that we now have because of Crutchfield, we can at least assign them under the Erie scale, like somebody coming in new might be like an NC 10. But because of the Crutchfield amounts, they are being paid at like an NC 13. So we can temporarily put on that particular job line for finance and HR that this person, this singleton person is being paid at the NC 10 and then, and they fall within that max. So that's what I was trying to say to Ms. Byer and what we were all saying, that this is, it's extremely complicated and we're trying to be transparent about it and equitable about it, but that's one of the reasons. But I'm not going to sit here and say, like, we've got a new HR person, a new CFO, and a new superintendent, and so they could maybe wrestle with what was done before and what they've kind of inherited, maybe wrestle with that and see if they can get us somewhere potentially where we can get rid of the maxes, or potentially where we land somewhere where it's able to be synthesized. And so that's kind of what the plan is. But as Mr. Teeter said, it's going to be an extremely heavy lift. That's what I said. I mean, my face said it, I think, Ms. Meyer, when I was looking at you, like, it's a lot of work to be done. But I think just the first step is honestly just being, I say this word all the time, transparent, right? And just putting it out there. And so I think it's well received, the feedback we've gotten from the board of putting it on, Dr. Lewis just said it to me, we stepped to the side, putting it on the HR website. Like, even if you pull clips out from the board meetings, right? Like, I think those are the things that we need to start doing so that we aren't saying, oh yeah, it's out there, go dig and find it in board docs. But look, on August 10th, 2024, this is the clip where the board said, we're doing this, or y'all, never mind. Okay. Never mind.
For one and
Dr.
all,
Lewis,
Mr. Council. Thank you.
I'm out. Okay.
Doing good. You were doing good. But as we wrap this conversation up, I do agree in terms of whether it's a reg or a PDF or a flow chart. How do we operationalize this policy that answers questions around the outside the duty day questions that Mr. Tab raised and some of the other pieces that we can provide clarity that's right there by the salary schedule. So here's a salary scale. Click on this document. Oh, okay, this is where after I read through this flow chart or step 1, step 2, this is where I'm landing.
Thank you. I can tell by all of the vigorous, the very, all the conversation that we've had around this topic that this is something that we feel is very high priority. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, Ms. Hager, Mr. Teeter, and the whole team for putting the effort in for this. Thank you for the work. This next part of the agenda, we're going to go to the summer programs, Dr. King, and let's see if we can do this in 10 minutes. Let's give- I'm sorry, it's Ashley Stevens. Okay, he's going to kick it off. Thank you so much.
If I can just ask for clarity, do you want, would the board like for Ms. Stevens to do the presentation that's attached to this item, or would you just like to make her available, for the questions that are, that drove the decision to pull the item? We certainly are prepared to do either.
Colleagues, what is your preference?
Ms. Chavez has a preference. It's 21 slides, y'all.
My preference is that you would be available for questions.
Absolutely.
We've read it.
Yes.
Anyone else? Ms. Carter-Alton?
I wonder if we could pull the slides up so that we could reference slides during the question.
Absolutely. Ms. Chavez?
Okay, we're beginning.
All right, yes. So,
Okay.
questions. So Ms. Chavez has questions? Okay, great.
My first and only question is about just thank you for this information. It's really good to see what all we have going on this summer to support our students. I am simply interested in getting follow-up data after the summer to see how many students registered or how many attended rather and the demographics. And my desire to see that comes from particularly a couple things. The ESL Newcomer Academy. I'm interested to see are there barriers? Are kids coming? Is it helpful? Or are they in attendance? Did they complete the program? I'm very interested in that, and also English for the 21st Century workshops. I really again appreciate that we're offering these. And the other thing is that to the equity and access piece that we talked about earlier with the superintendent's post-entry plan, I am interested in the diversity, racial, socioeconomic, et cetera, of and other, identifiers of attendance of these different programs. Sometimes you see a program that is fairly monolithic in who attends, and so that is an ask for the administration. And if that is a more than 15-minute request, then we can take a vote on that, and if other people are interested in that data as well.
Yeah, so we keep attendance data and registration data, so that is something that we could definitely compile.
Okay.
Ms. Rogers?
Thank you for making yourself available. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's at the last minute. Can you tell me, so I think several weeks ago, we got an influx of emails about some camps going offline this year. How were those camps selected to go offline? And is there an idea, plan, or partnership to look into bringing those camps back online in the future? And did those camps have low attendance?
Absolutely. So our camps that are primarily funded by our state, federal, local funds fall a lot in that targeted range and required range. So when we look at camps that don't target necessarily a specific subgroup or an area of need across the district, it then falls within that department's budget. So when we look at our budgets for summer programs, for summer 2025, we really were looking at the budget that was approved June 2024. And then as the year progresses, we look at, our data, what are the needs of our students? And we also look at those camps where there may not be funding, what will that be like to have a parent fee? Because that specific camp was fully funded by ESSER, it would have been an astronomical ask for our parents to pay that fee. So really taking the time to find additional funding grants, and working with our DPSF and some of our community partners so that we can make that a manageable program for our families to attend. We did have good attendance at those programs. We saw that during our time, it started with ESSER funding and ended with ESSER funding, and we did see the diversity dip down the less we were able to provide, whether it be transportation or some options for after-school program, because it was a half-day program, and many of our families needed full-day program. So looking at some of those barriers so that we can emulate that first year where we had a real diverse population of students that were experiencing that camp.
Thank you. And so that was the other question. So in terms of accessibility, camps accept the local vouchers. Is there a sliding scale fee? What do the fees look like for the camps that are going to be offered this summer? Is there still opportunity for students to enroll?
Yes, absolutely. So we have 3 camps that are presented that have parent fees. All the rest of our camps are free of charge to our families. For our Camp Fantastic, which is our through community ed, those fees are posted on the website, and they do accept vouchers and for families who qualify. We also have our Spark Camp that is parent fees. And they do offer some scholarships based on whatever community fund partner they're working with that's able to access that. And then we have Camp Inventions. Camp Inventions is a little bit unique in that it's a paid program. It goes through like an outside vendor almost. So through that vendor, you can do payment plans. But we also were awarded 60 scholarships so that we could have a more diverse population, specifically scholarships for girls this summer, and we were actually able to open up another location. So those are our only 3 camps with fees. The rest are free of charge to families. And then all of our camps are still accepting applications. Some of our camps, because they are targeted or based on academic performance, you kind of have to be eligible for them. So until you're eligible, for instance, for our Read to Achieve camp, we give family notices in this 3rd quarter to say, this is how your child's performing. This is a summer camp opportunity we have for your child. However, their performance can increase before the end of the school year, and then that would make them not eligible for that camp anymore. So for camps where it's based on specific criteria, it varies, but all of them are still open for registration, especially our ones that are a little less performance driven and focusing really on supporting a subgroup.
Thank you.
Are there any further, Ms. Byers?
So, Ms. Stevens, thank you for being here with us late just to dig into this. I think this is important work that we do, and I always like the community to be excited about these amazing opportunities. And it's great to see on social media just the praise that parents have for the DPS camps and the quality of programming. So I just want to thank you for the efforts that you put into that. I would say that a theme that I see a lot on social media, and you probably see it too, is people wish we had camp registration earlier in the academic year as they plan their summer. And I don't know with your team going forward whether in the future that might be something we're able to, people are looking January, February. I'm looking for the people being, yeah. So in the future, as we dream all the visionary things, I'm hoping that we might be able to be folks' first choice, especially with the affordability and great quality of programming that we offer. But thank you. I just wanted to express that gratitude.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Ms. Carter-Otten?
Thank you again, Ms. Stevens. And I just wanted to start by saying, in addition to thank you, that I'm feeling super proud to be part of a school district that offers this array of opportunities for our students in the summer and that serves so many students. I want to build on Ms. Chavez's request for data, and I'm wondering if, like, at the end of the summer, it could be a routine for the board to receive an update on some of that data about who attended how many people attended and benefit from our camps, who that was and what that looked like. But also any potential, and this isn't possible for all camps, but any outcomes from the camps that are measurable. Some of them feel like, we have the Read to Achieve camp where we should be able to measure changes in proficiency for reading, or camps for our English language learners where more to demonstrate that, like, these are in a objective way benefiting our students. We could gather subjective data, which would be useful also on satisfaction and changes to, like, quality of summer experience or things like that, but something to just show the board and the community also the value of the funds that are invested in this and the time that's invested in each of our summer initiatives. So I didn't know if that's something is that feasible? Is that asking for something that's out of reach at this point, or?
No, that's absolutely feasible. I asked that all of our program coordinators, they determine what metrics they're hoping to impact and how will they collect the data on that. So all of our programs collect data based on the metric that they have determined to be the data they're hoping to impact. And then we could easily compile that into a presentation to see the impacts along with our demographic data, just to look at trends and access across all of our subgroups.
Thank you. That sounds awesome.
Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for taking the time. Next on our agenda is the summary of follow-up items. Administration.
Yes, thank you. So I will be reporting on follow-up items from Dr. Lewis's post-entry plan, and Dr. Webb will be reporting on the academic items, and Dr. King will be reporting on follow-up items from the Human Resources Salary Administration Policy. So it's not necessarily so much follow-up items because I really didn't gather consensus from the board, but what I did do with the post-entry plan is document kind of some of the commentary, and then would share those with Dr. Lewis to direct cabinet as he sees fit. So with regard to that, the first was from the student representative. She wanted to make sure that we were focused and following up on repairing and fixing school infrastructure. There was a request to clarify alignment between culture in the strategic plan and student school needs. There was a request to ensure people first language and addressing language justice initiatives, strategically assessing how frameworks support students of color, a request to establish a timeline for goal implementation in the post-entry plan, a request to continue discussion on a regular bond program, a request to conduct an equity audit at each school to include arts, athletic, and systemic barriers, a request to conduct a deep dive into teacher survey analysis for retention insights, and to confirm that the safety forum includes wellness as well in that safety narrative, to particularly include mental health. And lastly, to consider how to, it's not last in order, but it took me a while to kind of wordsmith it to make sure I got it right. But, and so Ms. Chavez, if I didn't, please let me know. But it's to consider how to acknowledge organizing, including meet and confer and parents and community. And that was all from the feedback from the superintendent's post-entry plan.
Good evening. Two items. The first one, the in response to the proclamation for the arts in our schools month, there was a request for more money in the budget for the arts. I'm an arts educator for life, so I had to say that one. Also, there's interest for summer camps. There's interest in follow-up after the summer, specifically how many attended, are there known barriers, what is the diversity, racial makeup, and other identifiers of attendees. That information is requested after the camps. There was questions about how were camps canceled and which camp, why were some canceled, why did others continue? There's requests for attendance feedback and again, any known barriers. There was questions on fees and availability of the camp. Then there was a statement for, would like the camp registration to happen earlier. And then again, at the end of the summer, would like for the board to get a report on how many attended each camp, who attended, and any measurable benefits.
Right. So in terms of the salary administration policy, there was a request that the policy make clear whether or not extra duty covers scenarios where employees are called in on weekends to do work. Who keeps changing? Is that you? Trying to read this thing over here. Moving it. I'm sorry. There's a request there's a desire to make sure that the policy correctly and clearly delineates the difference between supplemental pay and extra duty pay. And that was from Mr. Tab. There was a mentioning that the policy needs to clearly establish that the board has to approve annual increases rather than those being automatic. Understanding needed as it relates to min and max placement. Could speak with Duke as they do the same. There was a request to make sure that the document establishes how people will be moved up and down related to how they were originally placed on the scale, i.e. the Crutchfield placements versus the Erie placements. And there was the hope that eventually there will be a process to merge folks who are in that same status, who were placed originally by the Crutchfield work or the Erie work. And there was a question about how the decision was made to develop the language about leaving and returning to DPS in terms of the one-year requirement. And then there was a question about where the board landed in terms of the question of whether or not people should get a step or a percentage. I think that there was an answer to that one, but I did leave it there. And then there was a question about are there other areas or other employees that get supplements that should be included in the work of the compensation group?
Any comments?
Ms. Chavez.
That was great, by the way, as a summary. I just have a question about the agenda. I saw that the legislative agenda was added, but I think it was after we approved the consent agenda. Do we need to approve that separately?
It was not.
I didn't refresh. Okay, thanks.
I moved that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Go ahead.
that's right. I just wanted to remind everybody we will not be streaming after closed session. Once we go into closed session, we will not come back online. That's all.
I moved that we go into.
Dr. Lewis needs a moment.
I'm sorry. Before we go, I cannot let this board meeting end without congratulating and wishing good luck to our Southern Spartans that will play for the state championship tomorrow night. The first time since 1959. And so if you are available and members that are still up watching this board meeting, if you can join us at 11 o'clock, maybe we'll end tomorrow morning early. 11 o'clock, they're doing a send-off for the team as they leave tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock at Southern. But the game is tomorrow night at 8:30 in Winston-Salem. Yeah. So good luck, Spartans, and special, all good luck for all the players, but special good luck to Keith Jackson, a member of my Superintendent Advisory Council, scored 30 points last game. So
Nice.
wishing all the Spartans well.
Mr. Tab.
Just quickly, since this is Arts and Education Month, Hillside High School is doing Majesty in the Mirror this weekend. So if you get a chance, please go out and check it out. I told them I would make that announcement.
Okay. Now, colleagues, I'll accept a motion to go into closed session.
I move that we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
Second.
Is there any further, it's been moved by Ms. Byers, seconded by Ms. Chavez. I'm sorry. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're now in closed session.